There we go. Thank you, Instructor Michael Hameen. You're always on point. And we'd hate for this one to get lost. Yeah, we have a lot of great information to share with you. I'm seeing some faces I haven't seen in a minute. It's wonderful to see you all. Yes, indeed, Javon and others. Great to see you. Salima Abdullah, I'm not familiar with you, but welcome. And anyone else who's here for the first, second, third time, fifth time, 10th time, 100th time, it doesn't matter. We've been doing this class for 15 straight semesters. It's called the University Online Learning Course, and you're welcome to join at any time you feel comfortable in doing so. I am your instructor, Benjamin Bilal, and I'll be saying some things along the way that will benefit you if you indeed are someone listening to this for the first time. So be aware of that. And don't worry if there are words or terms or ideas that we share with you that you're not immediately familiar with. We have a particular way of teaching here at the Nunetics Institute that makes it easy as 1, 2, 3. You'll see. So let me go straight to my notes and get started. If you have any questions, simply put them in the chat, and at the end of what it is I have to say, I'll gladly look at them and answer any questions or comments that you might have. The theme for tonight's class is 4 corners of the Kaaba. And this is actually a continuation conversation from our last class. And the last class was dealing with the idea of Adam, Eve, the serpent, as those characters are given in both the Bible and the Quran. And I mentioned some things to you that I'm not going to repeat all of. If you weren't there, you can actually find that class on YouTube. Just Google Imam Benjamin Bilal and you'll come to the page where most of my lectures are being preserved. So once again, thank you for joining us. We're continuing from the point at which we were discussing some issues concerning the one in Islamic history called Bilal ibn Rabah. We're going to give you some detailed information even on the name that this person carried and how much weight that name actually does carry. I wanted to begin though, especially for those who may not be familiar with Imam Deen Muhammad. He was an Islamic scholar who passed in the year 2008. He led the community of Muslims that was inherited by him, I could say, from his father's movement called the Lost and Found Nation of Islam in the Wilderness of North America, Nation of Islam in short, that was founded by the one called the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. When he passed, his son, Wallace D. Muhammad, took over that leadership and began to steer it into a very new direction, resulting in the Muslims under his study coming into much more information and much more clarity concerning the Muslim book of guidance called Al-Qur'an. The followers of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad were not oriented in the Quran. They were mostly oriented in the book that they had while they were Christians, and that is the Bible. And Elijah Muhammad himself said that his mission was not to teach us so much religion, but to save the baby from the fire. So Elijah Muhammad was dealing more with the social issues and the political issues and the economic issues that were affecting Black people at the time. And by the time he passed in 1975, America itself was showing a type of brand new face in terms of race relations and in terms of equal distribution of resources, opening up the potential, at least, for equal distribution of the resources. And we have come into a bigger and brighter America since 1975. It's not what it should be, but it's not what it was. So what I want to read to you here is just some words, from Imam W.D. Muhammad that were given by him on July 20th, 1986, just to show you where his mind was, where his thoughts were, and where his ambitions were, not only for himself, but for the community of Muslims that he had been given charge over. And the name of this short reading is Give Your Whole Self to Allah. And again, I'm beginning with words from Imam W. Deen Muhammad, so pay careful attention. Quote, I thank God I've never given my whole self to the United States of America. I give my whole soul to Allah and to obedience to his word and to following his prophet, peace be upon him, and his sunnah and pattern of conduct. That's what I've given my whole soul to. And because I give my whole soul to that, I can live in America and survive the life of America. I can live in America while America is disappointing, crushing, and working vehemently to see my life end. I can still live in America with hope because what I have will outlive America. What I have is bigger than America, and I invite you to join what I have. What they fear will happen among us is that we will come into an independent vision that will direct our lives and hold a purpose for the whole race. A vision that will hold for us the purpose that all men's lives were created for. They fear that independently we will come into such a vision. I'm going to repeat that last line. It's very important to understand what he's saying. They fear that independently we will come into such a vision. Now, here is the sad truth. Not only does the American white man, but also many of our Muslim brothers and sisters in Muslim lands fear us coming into an independent vision. They will make us think that we are being racist when we support one of our own as our leader. They will make us feel as though we are un-Islamic in some way because we say Imam W. Deen Muhammad is our leader. They don't want us to address race issues. They don't want us to address the long, tiring problem of the African American man. They don't want us to address our people's dilemma. They say, don't talk about that. Just tell them what the Quran says and tell them what the Sunnah says. That's great, but that's medicine. I've got to apply medicine to a sickness. Don't tell me not to use medicine and not to address a sickness. Yes, the Quran and the Sunnah is the medicine, and my people are the sickness. I'm going to address the Quran and the Sunnah, and I'm going to address my people. They are afraid that we will find the cause bigger than blind obedience, money, sex, and being popular. A cause so big that it will give us the desire to compete with every nation on this earth. That's in me, and I'm not alone. So those are the words, end quote, of Imam W. Deen Muhammad as we continue into the lesson for this evening. Thank you all for joining us once again, and thank you for your patience. I'm going to say just a few words about the science of nunetics for those who may not be familiar with it, and then I will segue into the topic for this evening. Nunetics is the linguistic science which allows one to connect Arabic letters with objects in nature, beginning with parts of the human body. Once an object in nature has been identified, the meanings inherent in that object are to be factored into the Qur'anic word at hand. So if we're dealing with a word like ilm, for instance, which many Muslims are familiar with and have translated throughout the years as knowledge. Ilm means knowledge. It also means science that grows out of the study of knowledge, various fields of knowledge. The three letters that compose the word ilm are the letters Ain, which as a part of your body is represented in your eye, E-Y-E. The second letter is Lam, which as a part of your body is represented by your tongue. And the third letter is Meme, and is represented by the part of your body called the stomach. So Ein, Lam, Meme can be translated into body parts as eye, tongue, stomach. Now, eating with our eyes is a popular phrase. They say, don't go shopping while you're hungry, because you'll only be eating with your eyes. You'll be seeing things, snatching them off of the shelves, throwing them into the shopping cart, and you'll overdo it because you're hungry. Your stomach is actually calling for that food. So when we eat with our intellects, those of us who are curious, it is called ingesting knowledge. That knowledge then becomes food, but on the mental level. Now, let us look at the nunetic value of these letters on the abstract level. Taking the same three letters, Ein, Lam, and Meme, let's translate them into abstract meanings. Ein no longer just means the physical eye, but on the abstract or the invisible level of understanding, Ein now means insight. Lam, on the physical level of a part of your body, is the tongue, but on the abstract level, it represents what the tongue actually does, and that is communicate. So Lam represents communication. And Meme as a letter no longer only represents the belly or the stomach and how the stomach is churning to break things down and disseminate the food and send it into the directions that are needed in terms of the nutrition. On the abstract level, what does that in the human being's internal life are what are called morals and ethics. When we think about moral questions, whether we should do something because it's correct or not do something because it's incorrect, we are actually chewing on that information in the same way that we had to chew on the food that is eventually released into the gut for the gut to begin dispensing the nutrition. That's what morals and ethical thinking does as an abstract idea within the human being. Imam Muhammad described the human being as the invisible you within. We are not just this flesh and blood. We are not just these fingertips and these toes and these nails and this pretty hair and all of that. That's the outer shell of what we're calling the human being. But the human being is essentially an internal creation of God. So this gives us the Arabic word ilm, as mentioned, which is translated as knowledge and science. Imam W.D. Muhammad once stated that when we eat, it is not the eyes, the tongue, and the palate or the gut that wanted the food. He said that when we eat, it's actually the blood that wants the food. That's the last stop of the journey for food when you eat. We think it's just what we see. Oh, that's why I'm so hungry. Or we think it's, just what we smell of the food or what we taste of the food, and that the throat might have wanted the food, but it gets pushed past the throat into the belly, into the gut. But it's not the gut that wants the food as the last stop. The gut is situated so that all of the nutrition can then be absorbed out of the food and into the various avenues of bloodstream and all of the places that that nutrition needs to end up as or end up in. So the blood wanted it, as he said. And he also told us that blood is symbolic of the social life. So here's the main point of this particular point. Blood is symbolic of the social life, and the social life distributes its social nutrition in the form of knowledge, in the form of resources and opportunities, etc. It distributes that equitably throughout the society. This is the truest meaning for the Qur'anic Arabic word ilm. Ilm represents knowledge, yes. Ilm can be translated as science, yes, but for what purpose? That's what nunetics is bringing us, the underlying purpose behind Qur'anic Arabic words. What's the purpose of knowledge? Is it just to know things? Is it just to carry things in the brain and talk about what you know and memorize surahs and all of that, or and just spout them? No. The purpose is to ingest this knowledge with the ultimate objective of sharing this knowledge in a way that benefits society itself, beginning with your own family. Would you go out and secure food knowing that your family is hungry and then take it over to your neighbor's house while your children, while your wife or your husband or whoever's in the home with you starves? No. There are people who will make sure that their dog is fed before they feed a person next door to them. Now, there's some issues with that, some moral and ethical issues with that, if the people next door to you are practically starving. But the point is, charity, as they say, begins at home and then spreads abroad, right? So that's what we're talking about. That's the purpose of ilm. It's to be distributed as nutrition to people close to you. And if you can get that nutrition in terms of knowledge and what you've learned of the sciences and what you've learned of social progress and all of these other wonderful things that all of us are in need of, we're all hungry or should be hungry for these things. Progress is what I'm speaking to now. Then we need to do our level best to make sure that the information that we have ingested and are digesting makes its way also to others through the form of your communication. We call it da'wah in Islam. Now, for the advantage of new people who may be listening, we're going to give a few more examples of how nunetics works on Quranic words throughout this discourse, so buckle in and enjoy the ride. We're going to begin by quoting from Surah 7 called Al-Araf, the 16th ayah or verse, where it says, قَالَ فَبِمَا أَغْوَيْتَنِي لَأَقْعُدَنَّ لَهُمْ صِرَاطَكَ الْمُسْتَقِيمَ. He, meaning Iblis in this context, said, and he's speaking, by the way, to Allah in a sort of conversation, not a literal one. Allah is making a point. He, Iblis, said, because thou hast thrown me out of the way, lo, I will lie in wait for them on thy straight path. End quote. Again, Iblis is speaking back to his Rabb, or his Lord, as it's translated. And he says that he's going to be waiting for this human being that Allah is in the process of creating. And he's going to make sure that he does not become successful, because Iblis saw himself as the de facto leader on earth. And he didn't think that anyone else could qualify for that leadership. Now, in the Quran, God's path is an upward path. It's not a horizontal path, not in this description of the path. It's called as-sirat al-mustaqim in the Quran. And Iblis here is saying that he's going to be waiting, he's going to be lying low, waiting for the human being on God's straight path, his sirat al-mustaqim. So the sirat al-mustaqim is an upward path. Mustaqim means to stand up or to rise up to a standing position. It's from the same root as the word qiyam, which means to stand up for the salat. And the sirat is a path that is responsible for the creation of standards. Standards. You see how the word stand is in standard? It's a combination of the English word stand and the Arabic word ard, which means earth, firm earth, terra firma, they call it, firm earth. So standards represent those things that you stand upon, but you stand upon them firmly. And it becomes very difficult to move you from the position of what you have established for yourself as standards. That's beautiful when you understand it. If your life is not regulated by standards, then you are not on God's sirat al-mustaqim, on his upright or upwards path. If you're on that path, your life is regulated by standards. If you're not on that path, then your life is whichever way the wind blows. Another meaning for God's path, called as Sirat al-Mustaqim, is the path of ascension that's built into your endocrine or chakra system. If you don't know what those things are scientifically speaking, then don't worry about it. It's going to be described. You're going to be given pictures of it, and you'll also be able to access a replay of tonight's discourse, so don't worry. Consider this like dining out at a restaurant on foods that you have not yet been introduced to. Doesn't mean the foods are going to be bad for you. Doesn't mean you won't be able to digest the food just because you've never had it before. And it might be such a high grade of food that you just did not have the opportunity to be introduced to this because McDonald's and Burger King and Wendy's and all of these other low-level food operations have been put in your way intentionally. It's the same thing with knowledge. We have not been introduced to this level of understanding when it comes to Qur'anic exegesis, as they call it, because so many other methods for teaching us and keeping us, on the most part, on a level of understanding which is actually not understanding at all. It's really just memorization and trust of the people who are feeding it to you. Nunetics is here to break us out of that shell and to help us ascend as what Imam Muhammad called independent thinkers. So keep that in mind as we go along. If what I'm saying doesn't sound like Sheikh, this one Imam, the other one, and Mufti, the third one, if it doesn't sound like what they have taught you, God bless them, and God bless whatever you were able to get from them and discern from them and learn from them and use that they gave you. That was practical. But again, nunetics is going to go beneath the surface of mundane and even fundamental meanings that we've been taught in an effort to help us catch up with the rest of the world that is responsible for leading the world. We don't want to just be followers standing around waiting for the next note to be played so that we can follow blindly like sheep. That's not what we're in this for. We want to know what is in the Quran that is responsible for making world leaders in all fields of ilm, or knowledge and science. So these paths need to be educated by the instructing signs of God's fitrah, called Mother Nature. These paths that are leading to that upward trajectory, called the Sirat al-Mustaqim, that path needs to be educated. The word that is being used in this ayah that's being put in the mouth of Iblis when he says, I'm going to be lying and waiting for them, it actually literally means to be sitting. La'aka'udanna is from ka'ada, which is a sitting position. And it's a sitting position that we assume when we are in private with the people who we know. If we're sitting in the public, that's called the jalsa or majlis. Majlis is if you're sitting in the masjid discussing some important business. Majlis is also if you're sitting in the movie theater watching your favorite movie. If there are people around you, and the key to understanding the difference between jalsa as a sitting position and qada as a sitting position, because they look the same when you make the prayer, they look the same. The key to understanding the difference is that jalsa is a temporary sitting. You don't go to the movies to just sit there throughout all of the showings. You don't go to the restaurant to sit there and no one else can come in behind you and sit in your seat and eat after you because you don't want to leave. No, jalsa is a temporary stay, a temporary sitting. Whereas qa'ada, this word that Iblis is playing on in la'aka'udanna, qa'ada is a private sitting where you can sit as long as you want, just like at home. Nobody's forcing you to get up when you're home. You're sitting in your favorite chair at the house looking at television or working on your computer in your office. Or nobody's going to come in and go, hey, man, you only had 10 minutes at this desk. What are you doing? And it's your desk. So God represents a private sitting that does not force you to have to get up. It allows for you to sit and think on different things of serious nature and calculate. You don't go to the movies to calculate your life, but you might sit at home for hours at a time thinking about how to bring that next piece of money in, or what's going to happen when this new baby comes into the house, or are we prepared for what's happening in the society now? We have to rearrange things, and you figure out a lot of that at home in private with the people that you care about. So Iblis is going to be sitting and he's going to be conniving and scheming also at home with whoever is in his abode. We assume at the shayateen, the people who have his same satanic intentions, those are the people that he's sitting in private with. And he's doing it right outside your door. He said to God that I'm going to be waiting and sitting right outside the Sirat al-Mustaqim, your Sirat al-Mustaqim, your straight and upwards path. So he didn't say he was going to be waiting for us at the liquor store or at the drug den or at the house of prostitution, because he's already got those people. He wants those people who are fresh in faith. He wants those people who have not yet been challenged by the levels of evil that Shaitan has been able to conjure up. So that's where he's going to be. He's going to be right there in the relationship between you and your wife, you and your husband, you and your children, you and your employer or employees, or, that kind of thing. Those vital connections that God has created for us to grow by as a society, those sacred connections, as Imam Muhammad once called them, that's where Satan and his minions are going to be waiting so that he can take whatever you're trying to formulate and dissolve it before it gets its footing. So he'll be waiting for us. And the only way to escape his snares is to become educated by God's instructing signs in the fitrah. This word la'aq'udanna is from that root qaf ain dal, which gives us qa'ada, that sitting position in private. But it also gives us the word for grammar, qawaid. The word grammar, that's an English word. And the word glamour, that's an English word, mean exactly the same thing. When you understand the interchangeability of consonants that we teach in nunetics and also in what has been established as Grimm's law, Grimm''s law, you understand that the R consonant and the L consonant are interchangeable because they are pronounced essentially in the same part of the mouth. To say R, your tongue has to go up to the top palate and it creates a trill, a rotating type of sound, which you can consider to be electric, right? When an electric appliance is turned on, you can hear that. The lawnmower, whatever, the egg beater, whatever, right? That's R. And it's being created at the top of the mouth. The tongue has to rise. That's why even in the word sirat, you hear the R in sirat. See, wherever you find that R, it doesn't matter what the language, it's going to have something to do with something that has to rise to the top. And the L has the same principle of rising, because the tongue has to touch the top palate of the mouth in order to pronounce L. El. See, that's why in so many ancient societies, they had this word El, E-L. Amongst the Hebrews, the ancient Canaanites, and these other people, the name for their God was El, Elohim, plenty gods, plural gods, right? El. because Ella was considered to be the highest thing that they understood, to be in control and in power. But El, as contrasted with Ar, although they both end up at the same place at the top palette, Ar rotates. It's not there permanently, but El sticks to the top because El represents magnetic force. When a magnet attaches, it's just like your tongue attaching to that top palate when you say El. But when electricity is present, there's not that kind of permanent attachment. Arr, it rotates. It's a rotor. It revolves. All of those things and all of those meanings are built into those two letters. And that's just two letters out of the many letters in the Arabic and English system that we're here to teach you. So I said all of that to give you a quick nunetics lesson, as I'm going to do along the way, and show you that when you understand the interchangeability of these letters, you're going to get more goody out of the understanding of these words. So that's how grammar and glamour came to mean the same thing. You might think glamour means how beautiful you look. That's what it means on the surface, but for the people who invented this jargon, they understand that glamour and grammar mean the same thing. Now, both of them have a connected meaning when it comes to the idea of magic and spell casting. Now, you might say, wow, well, instructor, how does grammar mean magic and spell casting when we use grammar to learn language? That's right. Language is spell casting. Imam Muhammad told us out the gate that words make people. Now, you may have thought that that was a purely good thing, that words make people. It's a good thing when you're using good words, words with positive frequencies and vibrations. But if you engineer a system that begins influencing people based on dastardly sorts of meanings for words, low-based, low frequency sounds and connections in the language and in the logic, then the words that are making people are going to make people that reflect the low-based frequencies of those words. It's common sense. That's where the magic comes in, because whoever is in control of the language, those are the ones who are in control of the fate of the people. You see why it's important now that we think independently and not just go along to get along? Yeah. Language is about casting spells. That's why the first thing that they teach you in grade school is spelling, how to spell. And you spell by repeating sounds, phonemes, over and over again. Say A, children, A. Say B, children, B. Say C, children, C. And then before you know it, it's A, B, C, D, E, F, G. And we do that every day we come into the classroom until the teacher is convinced that we have learned it by what is called rote, R-O-T-E. By rotor is what they're really saying, because the language itself is electric to begin with. And you have to repeat it over and over again, just like that sound at the top of your palate is repeated over and over again until it sticks. When it sticks, it's sticking because it has become attached in your memory bank. It's not just cerebral. It's not just at the front of your head, which is called a ra in Arabic. The letter Ra represents the conscious part of your brain, where things are situated until you can repeat them enough for them to fall now into the category called memory. In the back of the brain, in the back of the head, in the subconscious portions of the brain is where memory is stored. I hope you all are enjoying this as much as I'm enjoying teaching it. And we'll get your comments later on. Alhamdulillah. Again, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for being with us. Got a bunch of people with us tonight. Man, this is wonderful. All right. So keeping the pace, repeating. The word grammar and glamour mean the same thing because they present glamour before you over and over again until what's the standard or standing idea of beauty is accepted by you. So we think Miss Twiggy and the other one, you know, we think these people that are bulimic or having issues with keeping the weight on, and they come before us like a twig sometimes, and they can make that the standard of beauty. And they have in America in the 60s, I think they had a model called Twiggy, Miss Twiggy or something like that. And I think she eventually died, right? Because she had one of those diseases that wouldn't allow her to eat. She would be just turned off by food for no physical reason necessarily, just mental. I just can't eat. And then in some parts of the world, some of the Latin areas of the world, weight, especially on a woman, is applauded. They love big women. So those are judgment calls that people make. You know, it depends on what you see as beauty or glamour. But the point is that if I can manipulate, your tastes, then I can actually implant my idea of what's beautiful in your head. And this was done to the African American people as a so-called race of people, whereas the so-called white image of beauty was paraded so often in front of us that we began to see our own African American selves and women and men even, and babies even, as being ugly. It was fed to us through the Little Rascals when we're watching the character called Stymie. Think about these names that they gave us. Stymie means to stop the progress of something, to interfere in the progress or the growth of something. Stymie. They had another one called the buckwheat. So they give us these names. They had an historical cartoon character called the Sambo. You remember him? They're all the same character, basically. They're just different shades of the same shadow. They called him Sambo. Sam is from the Hebrew word Shem, and from the Arabic word Shams, and it means sun. In the Bible, they give you Sam, son, right? And they talk about the 7 locks of his hair. He's just a myth that's trying to tell you something about the sun and how it operates, and how the sun actually travails throughout the year, where it becomes blazing at some points, where they call that the sun's strength, right? Like Samson. And then at other parts during the winter months, the sun's rays are shorn or cut. You see that? They're cut. And when the sun's rays become cut, things remain cold. He loses his strength. And the one who caused him to lose his strength was the woman called Delilah. And see, when you have the Quran, you can figure these things out 1, 2, 3. You just follow the consonantal connections and the bouncing ball. When you look at Delilah and you look at Lila and Layla is night. So what cuts the rays of the sun? Nighttime. Now, if you look at that on the abstract level and you understand the sun to represent your social engagement with people, the things you do when the sun actually comes out. The sun, as Imam Muhammad said, is a symbol of your social nature and social interaction. So what cuts off or cuts down or eliminates and eradicates that social connection for you? It's your involvement in whatever Layl is indicating as night. Night represents in many cases ignorance. So if you don't want the sun of your social engagement to go out, if you don't want the sun of your social enlightenment to go out, then do your best to stay away from being ignorant, because Delilah will get you every time. She will cut your locks every time. So I hope that's making sense to you. So this magic and spell casting that we're discussing is a part of the plan of the one called Iblis, aka Shaitan. Now don't think about these names as actual literal figures in history, that there was a physical little dude on fire named Iblis, and and he grew to be this big old fireball named Shaitan, and he's waiting for you in the bathroom or in the backyard or at the whole house or whatever you think that's wishing. No, all of these things are talking about things that are part and parcel that take place within you and me. That Shaitan is in you and in me. That Iblis is in you and in me. But the true human called Adam, the Khalifa, is also in you and me, male and female. These are descriptions of powers and forces that regulate human life. And they are given to us in this manner in the Quran and in previous scriptures so that we can make those comparative analyses and be able to apply the logic of these meanings to our own lives in order to further the excellence that Allah wants us to fulfill. So when we say part of the plan of Shaitan or Iblis, don't think about some dude knocking on your door at midnight trying to get in and commit some evil act. We're talking about evil that people allow to grow within the interior of their own selves and their own souls. And they have nobody to blame but themselves if they're doing it consciously, willingly, and often. So it is to manipulate human life through false frequency signatures that are embedded within the false language or the false communication that he establishes. That's Iblis's role. That's why he's sitting alongside God's straight path. He wants to substitute God's divine frequencies in you, operating in you and for you and around you. He wants to substitute those frequencies for his falsified frequencies. Nunetics is so wonderful a science that we're able to look at the word clay given to us in Arabic as Deen and recognize that if the word Deen is consonantally connected to the English word tone and tune, that Allah could also possibly be saying that he created us from frequency. That the human being, instead of seeing the human being as just some physical mound of clay that God took some physical hands and began to shape a physical reality to, you can understand that on that kindergarten level if you choose to remain on that level, but you're going to be looking like baby Huey. You remember that, the big old duck, that cartoon? Baby Huey had a diaper on. He was about 5 times the size of the ducks around him. But he had an infantile brain. So if we want to remain in kindergarten language and the world of kindergarten ideas and religion, stay where you are. If that's your mentality and you're satisfied and I'm ruffling your feathers by saying some things that you're not used to, then just turn off the computer or the whatever you're watching me on and go about your business. Do what you were doing, just at ease. I don't want to cause anybody any friction. But people who recognize that this is a day in the Deen, as Imam Muhammad called it, and you understand that this Deen necessitates that you educate yourself. According to the Quran, your very soul obligates you. Allah tells us in the Quran, your own soul obligates you. And he tells you by comparing your soul to the sun itself, S-U-N. He tells you that the soul has the capacity for what is called fujuraha and also taqwaha, that the soul has the capacity for retarding itself, and we don't mean that clinically or derogatorily in terms of retarded populations. We're talking about retardation in the way that a farmer talks about the retardation of vegetation. When it's left in a situation where it's not receiving what it needs to grow into a healthy growth, the leaves will begin to retard. That's the retardation we're talking about. So we have to make sure that we stay in a situation of growth, development, and evolution. So when the son of our own social instincts and social intelligence is in a situation where that social nature is being challenged by issues being brought forth from the society and in the society, then the challenge for us is to remain social, although there are forces all around us trying to convince us and cajole us into the darkness of ignorance and separation, because when the darkness comes, we separate from people. We're scared, we're in fear in the dark, and we only want to be around people we trust. If we don't know you, we're not going to trust you. In the light, I'll meet people I don't know all day long, shake your hand, make business deals with you if you seem all right and everything is a go. But I don't want to meet you at 2 in the morning for that kind of business. So Sambo, going back to that idea, Sam is the sun, meaning that nature in you that wants to be social, that wants to be actively involved and meet people. Science says that the human being has what's called a gregarious nature. That means a nature that wants to be and yearns to be around other people like itself. But what happens when you put a bow on something? You tie it down. So Sambo is saying the same thing as Sam's son and his hair being shorn, cut, his 7 locks. It also represents the 7 levels of energy frequency operating in your chakra system. 7 basic levels. The light of them is being put out. So Sambo means the same thing. They're being tied down so that they cannot express themselves in the way that God intended. So that's a part of the plan. So be aware of the plan. In attacking us through frequency modulation, Iblis causes our star to fall. The people that run this world, boy, oh boy, the things that they know that we don't know, that are right in front of our faces. They don't want us to know that each and every one of us has been created to be a metaphorical star. Sly and the Family Stone had a song like that once, I believe. Everybody is a star. I love that song because it's true. When you're young, they call you a youngster. That means young star. Hmm? When you take on religion and you begin to preach the word of God, they call you a minister, a mini star. If you lose your way and you begin to act in a way that is detrimental to the people around you, then they may call you a monstar or monster. So look at that ending, that suffix ster, and wherever you see it, they put it there because they're telling you that that particular level of life operates in the same way that a star operates. Stars rise, but stars also fall. So this word star is consonantally connected to the Arabic word that we've been discussing called the sirat. The S sound, the R sound, and the T sound interchange with the S sound, the T sound, and the R sound in star. So even if you move the letters around, as long as they occupy the same sounds that are coming from the same areas of the mouth, they're going to have related meaning. And that's why the sirat is mustaqim, because stars rise, they ascend. Yeah, you've seen falling stars. That's not sirat al-mustaqim. That's something else. Those are the stars who have been affected by grammar. So when you look in the etymology online dictionary at the word grammar, it will tell you that it means magic, incantation, spells, mumbo jumbo. It tells you right there. And it will tell you in an elongated entry that I didn't include here, that it also is the same as the word glamour. Now let's look at what else Allah says. Allah says to Iblis, lead to destruction those whom thou canst among them with thy, and they put in brackets, seductive voice. Make assaults on them with thy cavalry and thy infantry. Mutually share with them wealth and children, and make promises to them. But Satan promises them nothing but deceit. And part of that deceit is causing Muslims, at least, to believe that Satan is some ephemeral creature. You can't see him, you can't hear him, you don't know where he's at any given time. Yeah, he's got a frequency modulation that can actually pull that off. But at the same time, Satan's company are as real as the company that you keep. In fact, some of the company we keep might be from among ash-shayateen, the Satans themselves. How do we know? Because Allah is telling us here that we can mutually share with them wealth and children. How do you share children with somebody who you can't have physical relations with and become pregnant by? And African-American people should know probably more than any other people that we hook up with some folks sometimes, especially our young folks, man. And you know, after the relationship is over, that you say, how did I ever get involved with that demon? You know, he was a, yeah, I mean, that dude couldn't have been from nowhere but hell. The things he did to you. Oh, there's no way he was a true human on this earth. Whatever happened in his bloodstream, in his DNA, he got infected, I'm telling you, by something that was otherworldly than the world that you and I grew up in, of sane, sensible, decent, and sensitive human beings. So no, you got a situation now where people are actually intercoursing with demons. So if you are not about the business of taking charge of your life as a true human, as an invisible person within, understanding what those invisible properties within you are, and understanding how to regulate those frequencies so that people don't regulate your frequencies above your head, unbeknownst to you in most cases. If you're not about that business, again, you're not ready for what it is nunetics has to offer you right now. Go back to where you were and what you were doing. So here we have some pictures. On the left, you have the endocrine system. On the right, you have the chakra system. They're basically the same systems. When Imam translated Rabbil Alameen as Lord of all systems of knowledge, these are included in what are called Al-Alameen systems of knowledge. Al-Alameen is from the word ilm that we were discussing, knowledge and science. Here's where the knowledge and the sciences of what the human being is as an internal creature, here's where that knowledge is. And they scare you away from it by saying that's pagan, the chakra system, that's pagan. I said enough on that in the last class to dispel that myth that the chakra system is pagan. Us from ancient India, we ain't supposed to be following that. We're supposed to be following Islam. The entire planet is supposed to be following al-Islam. What does that have to do with anything? The Quran came, as Imam Muhammad said, to give credence and further motivation to knowledge that has been in the world, that has actually been serving the world. And it came to make corrections upon that knowledge that does not measure up to the excellence that God requires. It will only get rid of knowledge if that knowledge has proven itself to be born out of Satan's camp. If it's not satanic and it's struggling for life as a system of science, the early Muslims under Muhammad and immediately after Muhammad passed, those Muslims were involved in the sciences, whether they came from Persia, whether they came from Greece, whether they came from wherever they came from, parts of Africa. Those early Muslims were involved in clarifying concepts for those people, purifying knowledge, adding credence to what they had that was truth, and putting refining touches on that knowledge that needed to be refined. But they were not about throwing out babies with bathwater. That movement among Muslims came along a few centuries later when they began to go around the world to people who had established civilizations that were hundreds and thousands of years older than theirs. And because it didn't come from Arabia, they dismissed it and they destroyed it. That happened through Muslim hands in history because they lost their way. That's another reason why we in this day and time have to proceed in an independent manner, because some of the history, I would even say the majority of the history of Muslim that we're reading about is not fit for us to follow. So on the left, you have the endocrine system, and you can see a part of the endocrine system is what's called the pineal gland that we were discussing last week. And just beneath that, you have the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland. So the sister gland to the pineal gland is called the pituitary gland, and they actually call that the motherboard or the mother gland, the pituitary gland. That's the female component. The pineal is the male component. And these glands secrete a particular fluid that travels down the spine and tremendously influences the functionality of everything that it comes in contact with. It goes down to the bottom of the spine, meeting up at the coccyx part of the spine, those 5 fused bones at the bottom of the spine, where that, what they call chrism rests. That oil, those oils are called a chrism. And it is supposed to be what has been revealed in God's scriptures as activities such as salat, dhikr, we call them meditation and mantras, and those frequencies, when repeated often or when listened to frequently, are the motivation for those fluids to begin making their way back up the spine. See, they come down from the brain, they end up at the tail end of the spine, down here almost near your root chakra. And those vibrations, those frequency signatures that are repeated over and over again as sound, what the Quran calls tartil. To read the Quran with tartil. They translate it as slow, rhythmic, measured tones, because that's the key for the return of those fluids back up the spine and back towards the pineal, where that fluid, after becoming refined during that journey, served to spark billions, not just millions, billions of cells that are lying dormant in this part of the brain, toward the top of the brain. Billions of sperm lying, not sperm, pardon me, billions of cells lying dormant. That's why it is important for them to keep your pineal gland calcified through the foods that we're trained to eat, through the thoughts that we're trained to think, through the fluoride that's in our water and in our toothpaste. Those things actually form a calcium layer or deposit at the top of our pineal or over the top of our pineal, so that the pineal cannot go on to do its further job of bringing us into a level of illumination. And we'll explain what that illumination does later on in this discourse. Suffice it to say that the average one of us does not have an activated pineal. You'll know it if you do. The ideas that come to you by itself will tell you, I'm on a level here that is not where I was 10 years ago as far as study. I don't even have to study that hard. I remember Imam Muhammad talking about that. He said a lot of the ideas, he started getting them. He said, I got it in my bathtub, so I can't say you taught it to me. He said, you can read but so much, and then something else takes over you. And you don't, he said, I'll look at a book, I might read 2 or 3 lines from it, I'll put it down and go, Well, Instructor Benjamin Bilal is at that level too. I haven't read half the books that I own, not to mention the ones that I've been clicking in Amazon and you know, Kindling. Man, have I read 10 of those, a few hundred books? No. But I can read a page. I can read a few lines and teach you for 6 hours on just those few lines I just read. I do it all of the time. It's just that you don't know that's my process. And some of you are starting to come into that same favor. That's a favor from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to be able to do that. Yeah, that's a favor from Allah. It's nothing that we're doing personally. It's whom Allah chooses to favor based on your circumstances and your willingness to teach it to others. So we have all of these things happening here on the left in terms of the endocrine system, and on the right, we have the counterparts, the energetic counterparts in what is called the chakra system. Dealing with the bottom chakra, which is mostly concerned with survival, but it's blocked by fear. Now, look at what I'm saying and think about what's happening in the world today. They want everybody to put their minds on this lowest level of chakric energy. By doing what? Making you think that your physical survival is being threatened. When you're believing that your physical survival is being threatened, it's going to automatically bring in this particular personality called fear. That's going to be what rules you, because I'm going to die if I don't do what they say. If I don't wear this mask, if I don't take this shot, if I don't stay away from my own family members, I'm going to die. But you didn't die the week before they told you that. How come you started dying the week after? But see, you don't think like that. How come all of these people started dying after they told us there was an actual COVID disease? Now, I could say something crazy, like it's your thinking that killed you. And I can prove it from science. Science has proven that over and over again. There are people who have died on the operating table. People who have died because the doctor told them 6 months from now, you're dead, and that's it. So, you know, make peace with everybody and all. And they go, and 6 months later, they drop dead. They perform an autopsy and find out that the person didn't have the cancer or whatever that they thought they had. So why did they die? Because they thought they were going to die. And the mind is such a powerful tool created by God that your mind is your personal genie. And if you keep rubbing that lamp and saying, this is what I wish, this is what I wish. And the way you tell yourself that this is what you wish is just by repeating things over and over again. Man, you make me so sick. You're killing me. Oh, really? Okay, keep saying that over and over again. You don't understand that that's how the human mind works. But the people who fashion this world, who are manipulating us on the energy and vibration level, they know that's how it works. That's why they keep you within a framework of certain kinds of language, low-based, vulgar language, because they know that's going to cause you to check out much sooner than healthy language. Healthy language, healthy thinking will put a glow, a natural glow on your face. Take away all the dust. Make your eyes bright. Doesn't matter what age you are. Healthy thinking will do that, because man does mean mind in that regard. Let's continue. So it is in these areas where the stars within us rise or fall. So we're talking about frequency levels and layers of energy as stars within us. You have a galaxy inside of you. They call this right here at the third level the solar plexus. Solar means sun. And you see all of these 7 colors? They match exactly the 7 colors of the 7 planetary orbs or bodies that occupy our immediate galaxy. They've only told you about red Mars, but they didn't tell you that all of the other planets are these respective colors. So what do you think these chakra energies are communicating with, Mr. Cosmic Man, Mr. Cosmic Woman? But if you don't know how to raise that chrism, if you don't know how to raise that fluid back up to its rightful throne, then those energies will not be activated in you. Those stars will not rise in you. And if they don't rise in you, you're not going to have anything to work with in terms of regulating your own affairs. And your affairs will automatically be regulated by people outside of you who understand your energies or your energy in a way that you don't. So keep that in mind. Let's continue. So this is just another chart showing you how the chakras and the endocrines operate. You'll see that in the replay, and you can pause it there to take notes if you need to. But as you can see, these 7 levels control areas of your physical life, your emotional life, your spiritual life, and your supra-intuitive life that they didn't tell you about. They told you about your intellect, but they didn't tell you that above the intellect is something ruling potentially in you called the supra-intuition. Intuition operates on the base level down here as instinct. Babies have it, but they're not always correct with it. Imam Muhammad told us that also, that intuition is not perfect in the human being, but he was speaking about base level intuition. I'm talking about supra-intuition, which is correct most of the time. It's what prophets had that is called in the Quran wahi, that level. We'll talk about that in a moment. Now, these frequencies appear as impulses, which are born within your nervous system. Everything that comes into your 5 basic senses has to first make a stop, a pit stop along your nervous system, which operates up and down your spine. We're talking now about your central nervous system. You have 2 major nervous systems, but the one we're talking about is the one that runs up and down those chakra centers of energy. And every time you hear something, feel something, taste something, touch something, or smell something, that nervous system is activated to a degree. And it activates what are called, I repeat, impulses. You're going to learn how to read these words tonight. All of these points of energy in the body are ruled over by frequencies or sounds. And these are the points of attack, which Iblis has vowed to strike the human being at, causing the human being to subconsciously follow Iblis's subliminal suggestions. The name Iblis, if you look at the consonants that I've capitalized, the B, L, and S in Iblis, that name is consonantally connected to the English word pulse, which has PLS. And as you know, P and B are interchangeable. They're called labials or lip sounds. So the word impulse is from the word pulse. And the word pulse is related to Iblis, which tells me automatically, without a college degree, that Iblis and his activities have something to do with the pulse or pulsation or impulse or being repulsed. Wasn't he repulsed when Allah said, make sajda to my Khalifa? That repulsed him. See, once you understand the science of nunetics, you're off to the races when it comes to writing your thesis, getting your further degree in whatever science, especially if it's language. So when you read about Iblis, also think about the impulsive nature in the human being. So now let us revisit Iblis's threat, but this time in full. Now keep in mind that Iblis, as depicted in the Bible, is called Lucifer. Lucifer. And Lucifer is often referred to as the fallen star. Star of the morning, the fallen star. Both of these names are consonantally connected. Look at the BLS in Iblis and compare it to the LCF in Lucifer. You see the L in Lucifer, you see the L in Iblis. You hear the sound of C in Lucifer, it's actually an S sound, right? So you have your S. And F is a labial that interchanges with B as a labial. So LC or LSF is BLS. I hope you caught that. And remember now, Iblis's promise was that because Allah had thrown him out of the way, so he says that Allah threw him out of the way, when in fact, he disinvited himself. He did what was necessary to get himself put out from the party. Allah had nothing to do with that. It was Iblis's behavior, his impulsive behavior, that got him put out of the party. So he said, well, because you put me out, just like a drunken man, you put me out of the party, I'm going to lie and wait for these people to come out. And I'm going to catch them when they come outside of your straight path. Let them put one foot outside of that straight path and see where I'm going to bring down those stars. They're going to be falling stars when I get finished with them. It says next, ثم لأتينهم من بين أيديهم ومن خلفهم وعن أيمانهم وعن شمالهم ولا تجد أكثرهم شاكرين. This is the important word, shakirin. Listen to the translation. Then will I assault them from before them, min aidihim, and behind them, wa min khalifihim. He's telling you I'm coming after the Khalifa also. Khalifihim, from the same root as Khalifa. But it means that which comes from behind as a support. So I'm going to assault them from before them, meaning right in front of their faces. I'm going to show them who I am and what I can do. And behind them, I'm going to be a little more obtrusive and not let them see my scheme and my plan. I'm going to get them that way. I'll disguise myself, or I'll creep up on them, right? From their right, and aymanihim. See, aymanihim from their right, and shama'ilihim from their left. I'm going to get them from their strengths, their right side, and I'm also going to attack them on the left from their weaknesses. Nor will you find, speaking to God, in most of them, aktharahum, kathir, most, many, great number. You are not going to find in a great number of them, they're not going to be shakirin, people who say shukran. But shakirin is also consonantally connected to the Sanskrit word that we've been discussing called chakra. Chakra and shukra are essentially the same word. All of these languages can be traced back in history to one language. The Bible tells you that, and the Quran also tells you that people on this earth were once one people. And language was developed based on articulation from 7 basic parts of the human mouth. Those 7 basic parts of the human mouth are what formed language, no matter where you find it on planet Earth, no matter how different they sound from the next. And all language comes to us as tones, comes to us as sounds, and all sounds that enter our 5 basic senses, especially the ears, are designed to manipulate us for the good or for the not so good. When they manipulate us for the good, we then appreciate. That means rise higher and higher like stars do. We begin to appreciate. But appreciation is also a word that says, thank you. I appreciate you. So where are we actually appreciating? We are appreciating within the centers of energy called the chakras. So look at how Allah, by using the word shakirin is shining light on the Sanskrit concept of chakra systems. Notice that the second assault is separated from the first. See, in this assault, and these are succeeding verses, 7:16 and then 7:17. But when Allah uses the word thumma, that means that this next thing that occurred is separated by a tremendous amount of time in most cases. So he's going to do this. He's going to be laying along as Sirat al-Mustaqim. He's going to do that first, and he's going to do that for quite some time until he's ready, based on your being subjugated through the first part of his scheme. Now he's ready to assault you from these four quarters. Before you, behind you, from your right, and from your left. And that's what's going to do the damage to your chakra system, your appreciation system of energies operating in you. He's going to start tearing away at your chakra system. Through what? Again, the manipulation of tones, because you have been created min teen, from clay. And then in another case, Allah says min salsal, and from sounding clay. When you hit it, it gives you a sound back. The first clay is impressionable. You can shape it, you can mold it. It's talking about the nature of human impression.
Use the bathroom.
Especially if they catch you at an early enough age. The human being is impressionable. But once you grow and you begin to solidify in terms of your ideas, your concepts, your philosophies, your ideologies, and you become solid in that, then you become a person able to express yourself. So the human life begins as an impressive life and grows to become an expressive life. That's the difference between those two clays. And Iblis says that he's going to get you. And he's going to do his best to get you into both. If he can't shape your reality from Jump Street, then he's going to come along after you become solidified, and he's going to have a big enough hammer to smash you so that he can do you all over again. Yes, how you need to talk to your children and your grandchildren. So the second assault is separated by a lapse of time through the use of the word thumma, which means thereafter. The assault has moved from the targeting of the endocrine system to the assault on the four quarters of the brain, which are the forebrain, the hind brain, left brain, and right brain. You see that? The first part of his scheme is to assault your chakra system. The second part of his scheme is to go directly for the brain, all four quarters of the brain. I'm giving help to criminologists right now. People who study how people commit crimes, at what ages they commit crimes, how they're motivated to commit crimes. What Allah just gave us in those two short verses is enough to train millions of criminologists. And I mean, if going word for word, using the nunetic method, they'll have the help that they need. So here are the four quarters of the brain in pictures. And the front areas of the brain handle conceptual thought. So when you read about these four quarters of the brain and you hear where Iblis said, I'm going to get them from before them, from behind them, from their right and their left, these are the areas of the brain that he's targeting. He's targeting conceptual thought. He's going to feed you your concepts. He's going to dictate to you what things mean. They even do this in the Islamic world. This is what this means in the Quran. Don't say that it means anything else. Anything else is going to be bid'ah if we didn't say it from the university. So some of them have become the modern day Iblis, assaulting us from in our concepts. How, Imam Warazuddin Muhammad, I know he said this, but he cannot prove that. The sheikhs have said that it means this. He cannot say that Rabbil Alamin means the Lord of all the systems of phenomena. Where did he get that? No one has said that among the shuyukh. He can't say that. It means Lord of all the worlds. But a much more brilliant Arabic speaker said that Lord of all the worlds is Rabbil al-Awalam, not Rabbil Alamin. Al-Alamin refers to thinking beings, sentient creatures. It doesn't refer to planetary bodies. Al-Awalam is referring to planetary physical bodies that you see in the heavens or through the telescope. So Imam Muhammad was correct. And the scholars who have been saying Lord of all the worlds for all of these hundreds of years are incorrect, and they should be humble enough to say, I was taught correctly by this Bilalian, by this black man, this African American, who I didn't teach this Deen to. We're humble enough to accept this progression that Allah gave him to give us and to humble us. So the left side is dealing with principles, opinions, analysis, and logical conclusions. The right side of the brain is dealing with beliefs, values, intuition, and creative associations. The left back part or the hind part of the brain is dealing with names, definitions, data, and information. And the back right side of the brain is dealing with sensations, experiences, instincts, and feelings. The back areas of the brain handle perceptual thought, what things are. So the front part, the frontal lobes are dealing with conceptual thought, what things mean, how things are to be interpreted. But the back areas of the brain are dealing not with conceptual thought, but with perceptual thought, which are dealing not with what things mean, but what things actually are. Isn't that wonderful? So he says, وَلَا تَجِدُ أَكْثَرَهُمْ شَاكِرِينَ, nor will you find in most of them gratitude. Shakirin alludes to the potential within these energies to graduate and become more and more refined and qualified. In English, as I said, we refer to it as appreciation. Appreciation represents both an increase in quality and quantity, as well as thankfulness or gratitude. Your money in the bank is appreciating if you leave it there long enough. The English words thank and think are from the Qur'anic Arabic root verb thakara, which gives us dhakr, which means male, and dhikr, which means to recall or to remember. So it's the dhikr, the remembrance, the recalling of information that is responsible for the shakr or the appreciation, the shukran in us. When you think back on what your mama did for you, even though she's deceased now, it brings tears to your eyes sometimes because you didn't realize all of the things she did for you, how she fended for you, how she supported you and raised you up and taught you things that if you didn't know them, you'd be in trouble. You think about those things, you recall those things. That all of that is dhikr in the human brain. And it's that kind of remembrance that causes us to become appreciative. In previous sessions, we discussed other fours, which can also be included in Satan's assault on the human structure. I'm aware of what the topic is for tonight. We're talking about the meaning of the Kaaba, the four corners of the Kaaba. All of these fours are related, beginning with the four areas of the human brain. So let's discuss some other fours as we creep up on the Kaaba. These four are the psychological. So these four areas are dealing strictly with how we are impacted on the psychological level. We are impacted through material. We're impacted on the intellectual level. We're impacted on the spiritual level, and we're impacted on the emotional level. All four of these levels are what we call psychological levels or psychology. If you're dealing with psychology, about to teach psychology, you have to immerse yourself in an understanding of the influences related to these four areas of psychological involvement: material, intellectual, spiritual, and emotional. The following four are sociological. They are the culture, education, government, and economics. Those are the sociological four. So we went from the psychological four, and now we're talking about the sociological four. Four is all over the place. Now, the first four surahs of the Quran also correspond to the four basic elements being discussed. Al-Fatiha represents the element of air. Al-Baqarah represents the element of earth. Ali Imran represents the element of fire. And An-Nisa represents the element of water. Now, I don't have time to explain to you why. Keep coming to class and you'll learn the details behind these elements and the designations that connect them to these four surahs of the Quran. And so do the last four surahs represent these important fours. In fact, the scholars have called them the four quls because they each begin with the word qul, or say, express yourself. They are al-kafirun, al-ikhlas, al-falaq, and an-nas. They also represent these four elements, and they also represent these other corresponding fours that we will be discussing today. Do not try to understand that at this moment. We're going to delve more deeply into these connections once you have mastered this level of information. These four elements also correspond with the four major Sahaba of the Prophet, as well as the four cardinal directions. Ali symbolically represents air. He was the intellectual one among them. And we won't get into the directions today. That's too much to discuss. Abu Bakr represents earth. He was the man of material resources. Uthman represents the element of water. He was the very, very sensitive one, would cry almost at the drop of a hat or a turban, I guess. And Umar was the fiery one who would get angry sometimes at the drop of a turban. Was on his way to kill the prophet, right? Fiery Umar. He had to put his fire out on several occasions. So they not only represent individuals in history, more importantly, they represent forces and energies and operations taking place in the fitra of society, in the fitra of your internal organization as a psychological and sociological creature. All of these are pointing to the same four ideas that Allah has planted inside each and every one of us as human personalities. You have this Ali in you, you have this Abu Bakr in you, you have this Uthman in you, you have this Umar in you. You have government in you. You have culture in you. You have economics in you. And you have academics in you. It's the same four. The elevated teachers, called the prophets and the messengers, never intended to found a religion. Listen at what I'm saying. No prophet, no messenger that has been assigned to this earth came here to institute a particular thing that we now know as religion. separate from everybody else's. No, they came back to restore the fitra. They came back to restore natural humanistic thinking and behavior. When humans become out of sync with that nature, when they become divided in a way where their schisms are beginning to cause all kinds of problems for humanity and begin to ripple throughout various people that they come in contact with, and evil becomes the order of the day, then Allah assigns prophets and messengers to bring all of humanity, not just some people, not just one people, not just a particular so-called race of people or particular ethnic group of people. He assigns humans to restore human nature. And it's not known to them as a religion. It's known to them as Deen. What does Deen mean? Deen means the same thing as your English word down. Deen means the same thing as the consonantally connected English word dawn. Didn't Bilal call the dawn prayer? Down is where you find things that are foundational. So the prophets and messengers come to restore whatever Allah has established as our original foundational life in these 4 areas of human involvement. Dawn represents the onset of a new sunrise. And the sun, as we said, is a symbol of social engagement, social enlightenment. So that's what Deen is also designed to do. Give us back the foundation for a naturally occurring social involvement with other people, where we're not trying to be crafty, we're not trying to be crooks, we're not trying to be molesters, child molesters, or rapists and all of that. That's human nature gone astray. And all, no, even worse than Ad-Daleen, because they're doing most of that with intent. So the prophets and the messengers come to set the primary example of what a human being was intended to look like as God created that human being. And it has nothing to do with the degrees in your back pocket. It has nothing to do with your money creating fat pockets. The wealthy get it. The poorest of the poor get it. And they're all supposed to share it according to their means. Imam W.D. Muhammad stated that when religion was born, Satan was born. Religion was born out of the schemes of skillful social and spiritual manipulators who sought to stick superhuman sets of figures in between the common person and their Rabb. So instead of saying one Allah, one humanity, as Tawheed suggests, the schemers said one God, prophets and messengers who are superhumans, who you can never be like, you can never achieve their excellence, and then you guys on the bottom, just say astaghfirullah. We know you're gonna sin, and you know you're gonna mess with your neighbor's wife. We know it's gonna happen. Yeah. But you don't have the excellence necessary to reach the level of the prophets and messengers. Well, then why is God sending these prophets and messengers as examples? So that's a part of the scheme. Allah says, do not say Trinity, do not say 3. You think he's talking about Father, Son, Holy Ghost? You're wrong. That's an easy 3 to deal with. He's talking about how you set up rivals with God. And you do it manipulatively by setting up rivals among humans who think they're closer to God than you are. So you say, yes, we believe in God. Yes, we believe that he sent prophets and messengers, Moses, Aaron, Lot. Yeah, we believe that. But we don't believe that any one of us as average mortals can ever reach any level close to the excellence of these holy, holy men. We put halos around their heads in our portraits of them. We'll never be as pure as these people. That's what they want you to think. When the fact of the matter is that Allah Allah created all human beings to achieve potentially the same excellence on your level. You might not need to be as excellent as a prophet, and you just dealing with country living in a few families on a farm. Be excellent for your situation. That's your challenge. Another person is running the city as the mayor or the governor, running the state. That person's got a different level of challenge. But the prophets come to set the example for how we are to perform regardless of our station. Regardless of our station. So there are no superhumans among us. And there's no need to be superhumans among us when Allah has created the average one of us to reach cosmic human status. We'll talk about that in a moment. The manipulators then would become the ones in charge of your growth and development and your evolution, because they have positioned themselves as you, pardon me, they have positioned themselves over you as your overlord. So now, instead of you looking at God, you're looking at the ones that you think God put here to tell you what to do. And then they put words in the mouth of the one that you think was sent here by God to tell you what to do. They take out of the prophets' mouths what God gave them, and they put in the prophets' mouths their dictates. You think you're following God and his prophets, when in fact you're following the schemers.
Instructor Bilal,
yes.
May I just please ask something? So then religion, Allah didn't give us religion, or it says that he gave us Islam as a religion, which Islam has all of these relationships with what Allah has told us to do as a good way of life on that Siratal Mustaqim. So Islam really is not a religion.
That's right.
Okay.
And to make it even more clear, thank you for that. To make it even more clear, Allah didn't say that he gave us al-Islam as religion. That's a faulty translation. We should keep it in the original language and just explain it. It's only one word, that's one syllable, called Deen. Religion is 3 syllables. What's easier to explain, Deen or religion, right? Religion means to realign something that has been taken out of line. Like when your automobile, right, Beverly? When your steering wheel needs an alignment, the steering column needs an alignment. It's not that the vehicle was created like that. When it came off of out of the manufacturer, there was nothing wrong with the steering column. They gave you a car that was designed to get you from point A to point B, and all of the fundamental and foundational things you needed to get you there were already included in the car. But if you put wear and tear on the car, and the road is rough and the miles are plenty, eventually you're going to have to go back to the manufacturer or the fix-it guy to get an alignment or a realignment, right? So if religion, that word, is related to being realigned, it means that what you're being given in the first place is not what you were given in the first place by God. God didn't give you something that you need to go fix. God gave you something that you could immediately stand upon as a foundation, called the Deen, which is down. Down means that which is foundational, that is supporting you from beneath you. It's supporting your ability to stand upright. And Deen, just like down, involves 4 directions. The most stable thing to put on the ground is something that has 4 legs. You can sit on a 3-legged stool. You're not going to feel as comfortable as sitting on a 4-legged stool or putting something on a 4-legged table. So 4 became a symbol of that which is foundational and that which represents the greatest level of stability. That's what Deen is. And it regulates those 4 areas of human concern that we stipulated just moments ago and a few pages up. Beautiful. Thank you for allowing me to explain that. All right.
So therefore, really what we're saying when you say that it wasn't created as religion, because what you're saying, Deen will also incorporate way of life. And this is what Allah has established for us is a way of life.
Yeah, but I'm not even satisfied. Is this Dina?
Yes, sir.
That's appropriate, Dina. Yeah, what it's saying is it's saying more than way of life. I know we like to use that translation, but criminality is a way of life. Deen will never incorporate anything evil. Deen only incorporates the 4 basic and fundamental areas of human growth and development as Allah has outlined them in his ever evolving scriptural language. You can't go to the Quran and get something to corrupt you unless you come to the Quran corrupt. Then it will mislead you because you won't even see the reality of what Allah is saying. You'll be following your own whims. Deen is only going to give you that which is good for the growth, development, and evolution of society. That's why they call that city that they went into after leaving Mecca, Medina, the place where Deen is to be established, the place where foundational life, social life on the foundational level. Because if you don't build the correct foundation, you'll never get to build the correct edifice that has layers and layers of context and meanings, and it just keeps appreciating. But you'll never get there. Ask any construction worker, if you don't lay the proper foundation, I don't care how elaborate the building is, it will eventually fall because the foundation is weak or non-existent. What are you building it upon? Sand, soft clay, like the Bible says. A house built on clay will not stand. All right. So for you Bible readers, in the book of Malachi, 3rd chapter, 8th and 9th verse, King James Version, it says, will a man rob God? Yet you have robbed me. This is God speaking. But you say, wherein have we robbed you? In tithes and offerings. You are cursed with a curse, for you have robbed me, even this whole nation. So in the Bible, God positions himself to tell these wrongdoers that they have actually robbed him of people. Now, what does that mean effectively in a way that we can understand it? Take the African American, for instance. They have stolen most of us away from God. What does that mean? God can't find us. God can't rescue us. No, he's rescuing us all the time. It simply means that the nature that God intended for us to operate with and in has been maladjusted. That's why there's a need for a realignment. The nature has been maladjusted. So we have to work like the Dickens to find out what natural life is. We don't even know what natural life is now because our children and our grandchildren are growing up thinking that Adam can marry Steve and Eve can marry Rosa, and all we have to do is adopt children. We don't have to have any real children of our own. That's too much work and too much pain. I don't want to go through that. And I don't need to eat natural food when I got potato chips and popcorn. And so we've moved so far away from the fitra. That's what it means that we have robbed God. These conspirators have robbed God. When you rob people of their natural human worth, of their essence, you have robbed God, because God is the one that deposited those values and those valuables within those people. Let's continue. The source creator reaches us directly through aspects of our nature already in place to receive that communication, but is lying dormant or made dormant, made ineffective, made non-communicable within us, which need to be activated by way of frequency signatures. revealed through scriptural language. So Allah doesn't need the priest, the Imam, the rabbi. You don't have to go to them to get to God. Say some Hail Marys, and some astaghfirullah, put something in the bucket while you're there, and then ask them to ask God to forgive you. That's not nature. The source creator, called Allah in the Quran, is able to reach us directly. He reaches us through the aspects that he has created for that level of communication. He's already created that nature within us to receive that communication. And he is always ready to respond to the communication of anyone who chooses to communicate. And what I gave you is in the Quran, in other words. So, to put it another way, there is an Ibrahim, a Musa, a Maryam, a Muhammad, etc. in all of us that's waiting to be activated. There's a Fir'aun, a Pharaoh in us. There's a King Aziz and a Yusuf and an Iblis and an Adam and a Zawj of Adam in us. All of these are characters and characteristics that are in us waiting to be activated. Now we're going to go a little deeper into Bilal, if you can stand it. The call of Bilal, which is what he was known for, is what Allah has designed to activate the four major concerns within our human structure and framework. Now, you can see him as an ancient Ethiopian who stood on top of the Kaaba with his black ashy feet, calling the believers to the physical ritual that we now translate as prayer from the word salat, even though the word salat never meant prayer. But that's what they tell us, so that's what we've accepted. And we think Bilal was done a favor by Muhammad the Prophet. No other place to put this guy. Put him on top of the Kaaba. These people sing pretty well. Put him on top of the Kaaba. And I'm telling you not what Muhammad had as a personality and mentality. Never. I'm telling you what many of the people who have come after him from that part of the world have had as a mental disposition. How do I know? Because when I go throughout the country and even throughout the world, no problem with an African stock calling the adhan, but major problems with the African stock giving the khutbah. Right here in America. I know people who have petitioned these masjids, some of these major masjids. Can so-and-so, he's good. He can send you a copy of his lecture or whatever. Can he give the khutbah? And they won't tell you that it's for racism reasons, but they won't let you teach. Not in every occasion or in every situation, but in too many situations. I thought Al-Islam was devoid of racism. Won't let you teach. Won't let a woman come up behind him and give the announcements. Not because she doesn't know how to read, but because she's a female. So Muslims around the world have inherited a disposition that is in need of a realignment. So let them have the religion. You go get the Deen. You establish yourself upon the foundational life that the Quran supports. They'll catch up later. We have too much work to do on ourselves to be worrying about what other people think about what we think. They'll catch up with us later. The good ones, they'll catch up. So those four major concerns, those 4 points of the Kaaba that Bilal stood upon are representative of the spiritual life, which is what the air represents, the emotional life, which is what the water represents, the intellectual life, which is what the fire represents, and the material life, which is what the land or the earth represents. As I said earlier, whoever controls these four corners of the human life controls the human life itself. See, whatever is influencing you, that's spiritual. If Snoop Dogg and whoever is influencing you, even though you're Muslim, they're controlling your air. If the latest series that you are binge watching is causing you to sit there for hours and hours and you start to tear because one of your favorite characters got killed off, then they're controlling your water. If you have people giving you their idea, their philosophy, their ideology, and you're accepting it wholeheartedly without investigating it yourself, including Instructor Bilal, you should investigate what I say. Don't just accept it. Look into it. I could be wrong in some cases. So don't just take it because it sounds good. Take it because you've investigated it and you know it's going to work for you in your situation. That's intelligent. But if you're just doing it, following somebody else's PhD or master's degree, then they're controlling your fire. And if you got somebody else deciding how much money you're supposed to make, Muslims shouldn't be thinking about the wealth. Go tell that to Saudi. Brother, get the job. You can sell socks, you can sell incense, you can sell dhikr beads. Can I own the masjid? Can I establish a masjid? Can I buy some acreage? And can I begin to grow some of my own food? Well, don't think on that level. We have that already. Now, what about when I die? Don't worry, we have a place, a burial. We have the whole thing. We have land, we have graveyard, we have, well, how come we can't have it? What's wrong with our people having a place to bury our dead? We're not even supposed to have that because you already have it? These are the issues that Imam Muhammad came to address also. I'm going to address them until I die. Whoever controls these four corners of the human life control the human life itself. These four foundational and elemental aspects graduate into the society as government, that's air, economics, that's water, academics, that's fire, and culture, that's land. These are the four areas of human concern that are regulating the life of the human being, not just sometimes, all of the time. When the manipulators get hold of the frequencies and cause them to become disharmonious, the human life then becomes burdensome and eventually it becomes worthless in terms of its human substance. So this is what's happening to us 24/7, 365 days a week, because we're allowing ourselves to be manipulated on the frequency level, the subconscious levels of frequency modulation, hidden motives and vibrations operating within us. People calling it Islam, but it's nothing but hidden subliminal manipulation of the human mind among a people that they are trying to corral as sheep and monkeys and donkeys. That's harsh, Instructor Bilal. Well, the reality is harsh. It becomes disharmonious. This is what the Bible is referring to as Jesus riding into the city on the back of a donkey. And a different donkey in the Bible is called Baal. And Baal, as I told you, is consonantally connected to Bilal. And Bilal is the effort to clean up the image of the one in the Bible called Bilal. And Bilal is called the worthless one. So the donkey is Baal, an epithet of the devil himself, according to Bible scholars, is this one called Bilal. And now here we have a character called the Bilal. Bilal. And out of ignorance, people who know the Bible story and the Bilal stay far away from the name Bilal because they think that it's another name for the devil, for the black devil at that, the black devil, Bilal, Baal, in one case a donkey, in another case a bull. You see, bull, Bal, Bilal, Baal, Bilal, all of it is suggesting the same thing, except Bilal is speaking to the corruption of the Baal or the Bilal nature. It's speaking to the corruption of that. Bilal is shedding away the corruption of that and bringing whatever Bilal represents back to its pristine purity. So what does Bilal represent? You'll hear about that in just a moment. So this is exactly where Satan wants the human being to be, because it allows him to go back to God and say, I told you the human being wasn't worth a diddly squat, not worth your time and attention, God. You should have left me in charge. The Bible calls this depreciated and devalued aspect of the human soul Bilal, which, as I said, is translated as worthless and is an epithet of the devil. The purpose of these righteous teachers called prophets and messengers was to teach their disciples the disciplines necessary for elevating the human structure in all of its facets. So if you remain undisciplined as an internal life of growth and development, then naturally you're going to fall into schisms and all kinds of maladies that are going to cause your human worth to become worthless, devalued. So that's your Bilal. It's talking about your soul, not your skin color. The prophets and the messengers, they did so by teaching the people that they, as initiates, were just as powerful potentially as those who were teaching them. That was always the disposition of the prophets and messengers. I in you and you in me, according to Jesus in the Bible. And abasharun mithlukum, according to the Quran, out of the mouth of Prophet Muhammad. I am a mortal like you. We'll get to that in a moment. So all of these righteous teachers taught, they didn't teach, I'm up here, you're down there, you'll never be able to reach me up here. And if you don't listen to me, God's going to squash you like a bug. That wasn't the disposition of these righteous souls. No, they were here to say, hey, no matter how far down in the mud you are, your fame can be elevated just like mine. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad took a message that wasn't pristine, Quran teachings, and did a powerful and masterful work of taking people sometimes literally out of the mud, off of the street corner, away from the wine bottle and the cigarette and the reefer and the drugs and all the alcohol and the prostitution. He literally took them out of those centers and away from those centers of activity and put them in a suit and tie, close cropped haircut, industrious looking. They didn't own businesses, but they began to own their own minds. And that was the first step along the path of independence from the overrule of so-called white societal domination. And we needed to separate first and foremost from that domination so that we could return to the scene. And in returning to the scene, we could be intelligent enough to sift through the residue and sift through the evildoers and join forces with any hands, any people, any operation, any institution that has proven itself to be aligned with the righteous guidance and the righteous intent and motivation that we are now operating under. We have no problems. You can be so-called white, so-called black, so-called brown, so-called yellow, so-called whatever. Doesn't matter. If your goodness is operating and being made manifest, that's the level that we choose to operate on. And that's justice. I'm not going to do business with you just because you're from my ethnic group or not from my ethnic group. Trust you more because you've been doing business longer than those who are not my ethnic group. No, I'm going to first look for people in my ethnic situation because I want to improve my neighborhood. I want to improve the business infrastructure where I live. And if I live where the rest of people who look like me live, what's wrong with that? Nothing. But it doesn't mean that if an opportunity comes from outside of that perimeter or parameter, that I'm not going to want to take advantage of that opportunity. The eventual intent is to join forces universally with people who stand for human evolution and the advancement of human excellence and goodness, anywhere you find them. So that's what the prophets and messengers were doing, sharing that knowledge with the initiates in an effort to bring the initiates up to their specific levels also, so that they would be capable of mastering their own lives without having to have self-imposed lords ruling over them in their circumstances. So the Mac wouldn't have to rule over you, brother. Superfly didn't have to rule over you anymore. Foxy Brown, sister, she didn't have to be your lord anymore. Rick James, you know, we didn't have to accept these as our lords anymore. Ice Slim or whatever, you know, Slim, who, you know these characters in these books you read. They were our lords. They don't have to lord over us anymore. Crafty manipulators of the language mismanaged the words of the prophets, also called seers. Ra'i, they were Ra'i, seers. And the prophet is reported to have said that each one of us is a Ra'i, an independent seer. We see things for ourselves, don't we? Which ones of us see things through somebody else's eyes? That's physically impossible. So if all of us are to be seers, that means we're to also have our own perspective. But if you start telling me about something that ain't there, now I have to question what it is you might be looking at. So we're to see through our own eyes, ethnically, culturally, politically, economically even, culturally. We're to see through our own eyes. God designed us to respect our own perspective. But the manipulators mismanaged what the prophets came with as revelation, so that those words would be interpreted in a way which artificially separates the masters from their pupils. So the teachers became separated from their pupils because of the mismanagement of scriptural language. The Quran reestablishes the position of a prophet in relation to the common ones being taught by the prophet. So Allah puts into his revelation, called Quran, these words, قُلْ إِنَّمَا أَنَا بَشَرٌ مِثْلُكُمْ يُوحَى إِلَيَّ أَنَّمَا إِلَهُكُمْ إِلَهٌ وَاحِدٌ فَمَنْ كَانَ يَرْجُو لِقَاءَ رَبِّهِ فَلْيَعْمَلْ عَمَلًا صَالِحًا وَلَا يُشْرِكْ بِعِبَادَةِ رَبِّهِ أَحَدًا. Say, I am but a man like you, like all of you, but the inspiration has come to me that your Allah is one Allah. Whoever expects to meet his Lord, let him work righteousness, and in the worship of his Lord, admit no one as partner. See, that's the recipe for success. Now, the English translation here by Yusuf Ali inserts the word but in brackets, you see? But, however, there is no such qualification in the ayah. It doesn't say but. It says, say, I am a man like yourselves, but a man like yourselves. The inspiration has come to me. So what is he saying? He's explaining what he means by a man like yourself, meaning a man like yourself should be able to get inspiration like I'm getting inspiration, see? But when they insert the but, they separate the master from the student, the teacher from the pupil. See? Kul, say, innama ana basharun mithlukum. I am only a bashar, a flesh and blood mortal, like you, like all of you. Yeah, there's no but. You see, there's no but. See? Just yuha, inspiration, ilayya, that has come to me. Hmm? And then it goes on to tell you about how God is one God. Your God is one God. And that's there for a reason, but we won't elaborate on that right now. The primary difference between a prophet and a pupil is in the pupil's initial ignorance as to how to handle and positively manipulate his or her energies or their energy. Now we're going to go a little bit deep. The word abd that's used and usually mistranslated as slave is what's being used here. Abd. It is to be properly translated as initiate. When you read the term abd, where Allah says that he has created neither jinn nor man except to be his abd, that means to be his initiate, to be the ones to initiate that which serves the interest of Allah's program, not just to be his slave. Allah said, do this, do that. Allah said, don't do this, don't do that. And he wants you to do it all the time. All the time. You're his slave, you're God's slave. But there's something in the nuances of the energy of that word that makes it very difficult, especially for an African American, to call himself that, even in relation to God. So, do we have to be a slave again? I know it's to God this time, but that, you know, that's just doesn't vibrate right. Yeah, because you are actually an initiate under God. And what is an initiate? An initiate is simply one who initiates and manipulates energy in a way which allows it to flow in the areas necessary for the advancement of one's excellence. So your job is to initiate energy. You find out the truth about something, how a thing works, how to bring a thing back to its fitra performance, you begin working on that. How to bring relationships back to fitra-based relationships, how to reconcile people's differences, you initiate that performance, you initiate that action, that activity. That's what abd is. And that's why it's slave as opposed to servant, conceptually, because a slave is a slave 24 hours a day. Well, that's your work. Even in your sleep, you're supposed to be dreaming about how to make a reconciliation between you and a divided relative, you and what's happening at your workplace, you and the children in the playground who can't get along with each other. That's supposed to be your 24/7 occupation, being an abd. Not sometimes, all of the time. Let's prove it by the word itself, and then we'll open up for questions and answers. And abd, transliterated as ABD, has learned to do this as a permanent activity in his or her life. We learn to initiate right behavior, right thinking, positive activities, and we learn to do this in a way which causes it to become a permanent activity in the life. The abd is not sometimesy, The Abd is diligent and consistent. The highest level of this Abd nature is to be an Abd for Allah, called Abdullah. Abdullah. The word Abd carries what I've taught you as the A of negation. The A of negation says that on many words that begin with the A sound, such as Abd, in English we would say amoral, apolitical, it means not. It's called the A of negation because it negates the meaning of the word that comes immediately after it. So Abd is one of those words which means that it's going to negate whatever word is contained within the letters BD or Bait Dal that comes after it. Bait means house. Dal represents temporary deposits. It represents the tooth firmly rooted. But although it's firmly rooted, it's going to eventually loosen and possibly come out. So BD means house of temporary deposits, place where things are stored temporarily. That's what your house is. You're not going to be there forever. It might feel like you are because that's where your bed is. See, bed, BD. But are you in bed 24 hours a day? No. It's a place of temporary deposit, your bed. If a child is being bad, unless they are Satan's spawn, they're not going to be bad forever, always. No, being bad is just a temporary thing in the behavior, in the attitude, in the emotionality. Then they're going to go back to being nice, sharing, caring, you know. So it alludes to a place of temporary abode. And Abd is not a place or condition which supports temporary activity. See, the A of negation means that whatever BD is, and BD is the place of temporary activities, temporary deposits. A BD means not a place of temporary deposit, meaning what? You're supposed to be like this all of the time. The position of Abd represents permanent service. As I said, when we go to bed, we do so as a temporary means of resting our bodies. You see that BD in body? It's because the body is not going to be with you forever. It's a place of temporary deposit for your soul. So although we are in bed temporarily, although we are in the body temporarily, we are in service to our source creator all of the time, even when we leave these bodies at death. So the spirit in me is telling me, actually, although I have quite a bit to go, to wrap it up here and just take my time with this and do a little bit more maybe in the middle of the week. So with that said, I'm going to open up the lines to anyone who might have a quick question or a comment or just a shout out or something like that. Inshallah, this recording will also go up on YouTube in another day or so. Thank you for having the patience to be with us. There's been over 40 people with us since we started. We thank Allah for that. And we're sure that a few hundred more will see it once it's up on YouTube. So open up your phone and engage us if you have a question or a comment.
Yeah, assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
Yes, assalamu alaikum to the learners and believers and the listeners. Brother Hassan Abdullah, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Yeah, I was a little bit late getting in for some reason or other, and I called myself getting in on time, but I got distracted, and the next thing I knew, I fell asleep. But Allah knows best, because God I had to work today. But getting back to this particular lecture you just gave, Brother Imam, it's the same foundation, and that's what makes it so potent. It's tailor-made, especially for us who have suffered under that as a benefit for the whole of humanity. I believe that with all my heart and soul. It's just like here in the Imam, take us a little bit higher. It's the same foundation. And if I'm wrong, I want to be correct because I want to be right. It's the same identical foundation. It's just that it's being explained on higher. You're taking us higher, where the Imam thrown it all out there, and he did this, that, and other, but the support wasn't there. The support wasn't there. We mostly parroted what he said without much investigation, and everybody was looking for a flock of their own, and as a consequence, we got to the point where we are right now. We lost everything that we tried to establish, but God willing, we're going to get it back forevermore, whether it happens in our lifetime or not. But we thank God for you, and thank God for connecting us back with the spirit of this mission. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam. Thank you very much. And in my humble opinion, we haven't lost a thing. If we're looking at materialism and that level of gain, well, that comes and goes. We lost a lot under the original Nation of Islam in the very beginnings of that community. When Mr. W.D. Farad left the scene, he left the community with approximately 50,000 registered followers in the Nation of Islam under his leadership, W.D. Farad's leadership, as he was training Elijah Muhammad. But when he left, controversy set in as to who was truly supposed to be the leader, and they ended up threatening the life of Elijah Muhammad, which is what caused him to migrate from Detroit and Chicago area into Washington, D.C. And when he did so, he ended up being arrested and being away for 7 years. But during those 7 years, those 50,000 people whittled down to about 300. So it looked like he lost. But look at what happened to that community in time. So when you have time on your side and goodness as your objective, you don't have to worry about numbers, and you don't have to worry about those kinds of loss, because as the Quran says, the earth is spacious. So the challenge is on us to take advantage of the material acquisition that we still have. We have individuals among us who have land enough for us to begin developing community life for real. Because as someone said in the beginning, if you don't have land, you don't really have a community. Imam Muhammad said that if you don't have land, and you're not talking about land acquisition, you might as well take the word community out of your vocabulary. He said, we just call it an association. Those are his words. We're just an association. So we need to do what we need to do on the level of association until we can begin getting serious about establishing ourselves on some pieces of land around this country and even around the world. Doesn't even have to stay here in America. We should have 5 acres, 10 acres, 20 acres, 2 acres, everywhere. So if we're losing time trying to stay in the projects or trying to stay in these places that other people own and dictate. When 2 or 3 of us can get together, put a few dollars and a few nickels together, rub them together, and we'll have 5 acres worth of our own land and our own food grown on that land, and what happens thereafter. And times are forcing us, believe it or not, to come to that posture, to come into that kind of recognition and that kind of mentality. We don't see it right now, and our young people want to be in the big cities and the highlights and all of that, and the clubs, and they want to be there now. But I'm telling you, a situation is brewing in the background of all of this that is going to, we're going to be craving each other's company in a few minutes. And if you're not clear on how to grow some food or how to purify your water, you're going to be in big trouble, because you had all of the time in the world to learn. Not to mention, if you're not clear on what the Quran is saying and giving you as your life structure. So that's where we should be, and that's what nunetics is. So don't despair because of what we don't have. Start looking forward to building upon the things that we do have and can have an increase in a short period of time. But thank you for that. Anyone else? Quick.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
This brother Nazim Rashid, Phoenix. How are you doing, my brother?
I'm good, and thanks for your emails earlier. Yeah.
Alhamdulillah. MashaAllah, I love this. Now, I want to have, is there a way to get a copy of that chart you're showing the chakras next to the endocrine system?
Yeah. I'll send it to you.
I love that. I love that. And
Yeah.
with that in mind, there's something that I've used to teach myself with children is about the thymus gland. Now, other glands I can't talk about with authority, but
Yeah.
that particular gland I can talk about. Because the thymus gland is the only one I know about that actually shrinks and swells depending on the energy that you have around you. And I use that because with kids, I was telling them that with their thoughts, they can influence their own immune system with their thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the thymus gland, that's where the T cell, T stands for thymus, which starts in the marrow, bone marrow, goes to the thymus for conditioning for the blood cells, from the thymus goes into the blood. And so if your thymus is at this a bigger state, you have more T cell count in your system. When it shrinks, it has less T cells. Okay, now follow me. So if you're angry, if you eat the wrong food, if you ingest the wrong thing, the thymus will shrink, thus having less T cells into your system. It's very, very important to understand that, you see, and I've proven it through muscle testing with the kids. I said, let's put a cube of white sugar on your thymus, hold it there, and I'll muscle test you. They'll be weak every time.
Allah.
Okay. Now I'll say, now put an organic apple there. They're strong, just that by itself. All right. And so therefore I did that if we just think the right thoughts, eat the right food, have the right kind of water. All right. And what happens, that improves our immune system by increasing our T cells in our system. I want to bring that out to you.
Well, thank you. Every living thing operates upon the principle of contraction and
expansion.
Pardon me. Yes. Contraction and expansion. Even the very cells that build these bodies operate on that same principle. So if something is considered to be, okay, some of you need to close your phones while I'm speaking. It's an echo. If something is considered to be a danger to the cell, then the cells automatically know, they have intelligence, and they automatically know to shrink and to close in order to not let that antagonistic influence into its interior. And it's only after the danger has subsided that the cell will begin to open up and allow nutrition in once again. So when this condition occurs, it is because the brain is operating on the level of fight or flight, which is what they call the reptilian mode, fight or flight. However, when the brain is in fight or flight mode, which is the most primal, or what they would call primitive mode for the brain, the higher levels of the brain that deal with your emotionality, that deal with memory, that deal with rational thinking, moral judgment, all of that shuts down in order to give preferential treatment to the emergency. It needs strength in the arms and in the legs to fight or flee.
Yes.
But while it's doing that, the higher regions of the brain become inoperable. Now, if schemers can design a scheme to keep people in perpetual fear of their survival, keep them in perpetual emergency mode, which is what they've done on the most part for most of the poor nations of the world. Forget about just America, especially our folks. We stay in conspiracy and emergency mode. Somebody's always trying to do something to get rid of us. Yeah, they don't want no more black people. Look at the movies, the futuristic movies. They ain't even got none of us in those movies because they don't intend for us to be here. And the depopulation. And so they inundate us with these influences to condition us to remain in a permanent state of emergency so that the higher brain, the emotionality, the sensitivities, the moral and rational logic aspect, that will never grow because it has to shut down in order to give all of that energy to fight or flight.
Right.
So what I'm saying is, I don't care what they're preaching as an emergency, COVID this and Novid that. Today it's now the Delta you got to be afraid of. Do you know how many concepts they can go through before this thing is over and done? It'll be alpha next, and then it'll be, they'll start making up names. Yeah, they just go through the Greek alphabet until they wear you out. Tell me something just popped up last week and there's over 300,000 people sick from it. I don't see any of them around me. I live in a pretty populated area. And you sniffle and cough and gag, and then you called it Delta. You called it COVID. See, how bad was it? Well, it wasn't too bad. Well, then it wasn't what they're talking about that's killing people. That was called the annual flu.
Right.
So I'm saying that to say, man, if you don't put that fear thing in its proper place, you ain't gonna be good for nobody when Allah finally says it's your turn to lead. You ain't gonna be worth nothing. You understand? Because you gave away all of your strength fighting or fleeing.
Right.
You should have been given that strength to improving upon your sensitivity, your human sensitivities, and your human sensibilities. That's where the work is right now.
Right.
So we got to stop being so emotional with each other. I don't like the way he said, but I don't like what she said. Well, too bad. We got places to go for you to be that pouring out the frame about somebody who says something, and you don't even know. You fighting back and forth on Facebook with people you don't even know.
Right.
Getting mad, can't sleep at night because somebody says something about you that you don't like on Facebook, where you got fake friends.
Assalamu alaikum.
That's right.
Alaikum assalam.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Hold on, I think it was that Michael Hameen who chimed in.
Michael Hameen. Assalamu alaikum to the learners and to you, instructor. I shared with you in a conversation some days ago about going back to look at the last lecture that Imam Muhammad gave, Shared Freedom Space. And before he got to the question and answers, the statement that he made was he was speaking specifically of the Chicago Muslims, but I think it carries over to many throughout his association. He said, "You all are some of the most moody people that we know. My father, had problems with you all. You get a mood and we don't see you. You get a mood and you stop giving charity. You just moody. You're moody people, and that's an issue with our emotional, our emotional lack of control." And it speaks to exactly what Brother Nazim spoke about and you spoke about, how it affects us in more than just one way. We become, we become less productive. We become less healthy. We become a lot of lacking things, because of it. And I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. You're absolutely right. Which segues sort of into this question that Fidel put in the chat. And he asked the question, can ones who claim to be Muslim and followers of the Quran and Muhammad who think and act racist really be considered true Muslims? That takes us into a whole nother area that I'm not going to elaborate on tonight, but it's the area of what a Muslim actually means, Quranically speaking. People don't recognize that in the time of Muhammad, most of the people who followed his message were not called or calling themselves Muslims. They were calling themselves mu'min. They were the community of mu'min. When you go back and read about the history of those who took on the leadership after the passing of the prophet, who were mistakenly or erroneously called caliphs or khalifas. They were called the caliphs over the mu'min, not over the Muslims. Muslims was a different category of people during the time of the prophet. Muslim was anybody who agreed to live in peace and follow the rules of the community that was supporting and protecting them. That was people from the Christian community. Remember, Medina had Christians. Medina had Jews and other people. If they agreed to live within the provinces where Muslims had established the foundations for that society, and were providing the majority of economics and government and these other things. And they were agreeing, Muslim was in agreement to live within peace, salam, Muslim. If they could agree to that, the name for those people was Muslim, although they weren't necessarily mu'min. Those who followed the Quran itself and the direct example of Muhammad the Prophet were the ones who were given the title mu'min. And you have to understand the difference. Allah says in the Quran that the mu'min and the Yahud, the Jews, and the people called Nasara, the Christians, any who believe in Allah, right? And the last day, they shall not grieve. Pardon me, they shall not fear, nor shall they grieve. Those are three distinct communities of people. The Mu'min, the Yahud, the Nasara. Three distinct people. All three have so-called believing people within their context. But the Mu'min was specified for those people who were responding to the direct call of Muhammad the Prophet. But all three of those groups that were agreeing to live within close proximity and accepting the rule of law that was put down by Muhammad and his companions, the whole group of them were called Muslimun. You go research that for yourself. Alaikum salam.
I just
Let me ask first, just to make sure that there are not people who are just slow on the trigger out there who might have had a question, new people especially. Okay, we need to just get in the habit, even if they don't respond. Anyone who's new, who has a question or just wants to give a greeting, please do so, so that we'll know that you're in the queue. Or if you haven't spoken that much in other classes, you know, this is a class, it's not a public lecture, it's a class where you're free to ask questions or make yourself known if you choose to do so. And if not, then we give way to our regulars. Is there anyone?
I was just
Hold on.
oh, I'm sorry.
You know, our people, you got to give them 30 seconds.
Alhamdulillah.
Even though they're not in the camera, they went to fix their makeup, you know. just out of, I hope they weren't trying to look glamorous. All right, go ahead, Barbara. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yes, sir. Just a comment in reference to when you were on Surah 7, ayat 16, where Iblis was trying to blame Allah for throwing him out of heaven, and but it was his own impulsive ways, as you explained. But then when it was saying that, nor would you find in most of them gratitude for the mercies, then what Iblis said, where he would wait on the path and assault them from before, behind, and from the right and the left. Then there's this other prayer that we say, or dua that we say, and I know I say it often, about the same thing, asking Allah to stay before us and after us, and to the right of us and left of us. And I know over the years, as I dealt with that, it was a matter of accepting, because Allah is always there. So it's a matter of us accepting. And I was relating that to the fact that nor would you find in most of them gratitude, because we don't accept that. And we don't accept the fact that Allah is everywhere. He's before us and after us, you know, so it's our acceptance of that. And this made it much more clear in reference to, you know, even our du'as and what we ask of Allah and what we put out there in the universe as to what we need to get back. So, you know, Iblis is, you know, out there, and he knows very well. But then is it not saying somewhere, I can't say the surah, but where Allah says he will not get his people.
Yeah.
So his people are the ones that accept the fact that Allah is one and he is all.
Yeah. And there is a passage which speaks to a group of people called al-mukhlisin that Allah said that he would not be able to get. Now, al-mukhlisin, that word is from the verb khalasa, which also gives us the word ikhlas, which we're familiar with. And ikhlas is translated as the unity and also as the purity. So inherent in the meaning of al-mukhlisin is the idea that these are people who have accepted an overriding sense of unity among themselves and a unified existence with their Rabb, or their Lord, as well as a situation which has allowed them to remain purified. And purified means that they have not allowed in anything extraneous to what Allah has ordered. And I'll give you a for instance. When we say khalas, that means that's it. We're not allowing any more conversation to take place. That's it, right? Khalas is from the same root as ikhlas and al-mukhlisin, from the same root. And that same root, khalasa, gives us the English word class. And when you're in a particular class, if I'm in grade school and they put me in, I'm in, let's say the 4th grade, but I'm in 4-1. You know, they had 4-1, 4-2, 4-3, and the higher the numbers got, the dumber you were supposed to be, according to certain people in the school. But if you were in that A1 class, 4-1, man, in the 4th grade, you were super duper as a student. And nobody else from those other grades, those competing grades, could come into your class and learn what you were learning, because you, as they say, were in a class of your own. So that's what ikhlas is, and that's what al-mukhlisin is. They are people who are in a class of their own. But what qualifies that class? The fact that they do not let in anything that's going to interrupt their purity. So here's the example. Allah says what he says, and you introduced something that said that Allah, you ask a dua, will Allah keep you safe from what is before you, what is behind you, so forth. But that dua is not from the Quran. That dua is from a hadith. Now, it can touch you in the right way. It can make you feel as good as you want it to feel, but it does nothing to complete the message that Allah gave us in regard to coming from before you, from behind you, from the right and from the left. In fact, it may take away from what Allah was saying, because it's a scholarly mind now. I know we think it was the Prophet that said it. Muhammad the Prophet would not say anything that was not totally consistent with the Quran. If he was elaborating on the Quran, he would cite those verses. But there were scholarly people who were attempting to teach newbies that were coming into the religion by droves, 100 years, 200 years after the Prophet had passed. And they were scratching their heads trying to come up with the best ways to give the people as much information as they needed to support this Deen that had by then become a religion. And that's the other movement that we're not familiar with, how Al-Islam became Islam, how something that was intended to return the human being to his functional and foundational life that he shares with every other human being he comes in contact with, bringing that human life back to its pristine purity, al-mukhlisin, how within a period of 100 to 200 years after that, it became codified by people who were politically and economically motivated. So they are the ones who began to design an artificial class called Muslim that Jews and Christians couldn't participate in, and that Jews and Christians were not going to go to the level of heaven or heaven at all if they didn't say Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Then you can't be in our class. But that was a fabricated class. The class Allah is speaking to, it are the ones who accept the purity of what he says in the Quran and the purity of the messages that are feeding their intellects from the overall ayat, instructing signs that he created in his fitra, in the natural world around him. So this is a whole level we're talking about. So I say that to caution everybody against attempting to qualify or add to what Allah says through some hadith or some scholar or some. Don't do that. Just leave it as what Allah said and study what Allah said. And you'll be inspired from that point, as you are already. I know from listening to you. You'll be inspired to add your commentary, because your commentary is going to be in complete synchronism with what Allah has said. That was Imam Muhammad's forte. He wasn't just giving you scholarship that he dreamt up somewhere or that he accepted from Abu this one and Ibn the other one. He was giving you commentary based on the deductive reasoning that he employed, from specifically paying attention to certain words. He was even paying attention to the nuances of how the words were pronounced that also contributed to the meaning, like فَإِنَّ مَعَ الْعُسْرِ يُسْرًا. See, and with the difficulty comes the ease. What is the difficulty? El-usra. It's difficult to pronounce. You don't have to have a PhD in your back pocket to get that message. And then yusra, that's ease. So the Quran is not just giving you words. The revelation, Imam Muhammad said, is even contained in the vowels that are being used. And I gave you a whole lesson on the vowels, fatha, kesra, dhamma. We'll go over that again in a couple of weeks for those who missed it. But all of the Quran is revelation, whereas all of these hadiths, none of those hadiths are revelation. I don't care if they say the prophet said it or not. If it wasn't inspired, it wasn't the Quran.
Right.
And if it didn't qualify for the Quran, why would we hold it on the same level as the Quran? You accept it as a piece of scholarship, and you deal with it like you deal with scholarship. If it's good for you, it's working for you, fine. But it's not going to work for you in any measure as close to what the Quran is giving you to work with. That's the point. And I drill that. I'm going to drill that home until I die.
Well, thank you, because what that does is it starts to erase some of those things that we have ingested over the years that we just accepted them. And so with this nunetics teaching, it's one by one throwing it out.
Yeah.
Which brings us closer.
I'm being inspired to say this to us in a different way also. I've said this before in previous classes, and this is classic logic here. In the Bible, there's Jesus, and then there's one called Peter. And it says that Peter witnessed Jesus walking upon the water. And when Jesus noticed Peter noticing him, he beckoned to Peter to walk on the water also, which means that Jesus believed he had that potential, right? But it says as Peter began to walk on the water, he soon sank. He sank. Now, what is that saying? First of all, you have to know what Peter means. It's from the Greek word Petra. And Petra is what gives us the English word petrified. And petrified is actually a reference to stone.
Stone. Right.
So Peter means stone or rock, something petrified, something that's solidified to the point where it cannot take another form after that unless you crash it, crack it,
Right.
split it up. Okay. That's what the Quran is speaking to when it speaks about having you and your families fear the fire whose fuel is men and stones. The Quran is addressing previous revelations that have been manipulated by the hands of men to say what those men wanted you to hear so that they could situate themselves as mediators and go-betweens between you and your direct communication with Allah, as I mentioned earlier. Now, what does this mean in terms of the overall logic? Jesus in the Bible, pardon me, and in the Quran, but in the Bible is called the Word of God. So Jesus walking on water means that the Word of God was supported by whatever water represents as a symbol. And water represents cleanliness, purity, emotionality, pure emotions, that ikhlas, purity we were talking about. Jesus is all of that. So all of that will support the Word of God if you have that operating in you. Purity, pure intentions, pure motivations, pure actions, right? Clean hands. All of that is going to support the Word of God being placed upon you as a responsibility, as the water was able to hold up and support Jesus, who is the Word of God. Now, Peter represents that which was petrified, that came after those who had preached and established the Word of God. So what is the petrification speaking to? It's speaking to those who came behind Christ and began manipulating the language so that the language would have a very narrow and petrified meaning. And that's what the hadiths did, on the most part, coming behind the Quran. The hadiths solidified and petrified the wisdom so that those coming after Muhammad the Prophet in generations like ours can never position ourselves to say that we have an advanced understanding that they didn't have, because they petrified the meaning for 1400 years ago. If it wasn't what they said 1400 years ago, then they don't accept it. They say it's innovation. They say it's bid'ah. And that's what's stopping the Muslim population from reaching the excellence that the Quran intended for them to reach, because the Quran is an evolutionary book. It's not stuck in the 7th century. The Quran is so far ahead of this world. I could show you some things in the Quran now that haven't even been invented yet, but Allah speaks on them. And things have happened in the last 1500 years that have allowed the scientists to say, well, we didn't know this 20 years ago, but look, it's in the world now, but the Quran predicted it. We didn't know that was a prediction for this, but look at the language. So once we become more familiar with the nuances of Quranic words and languages and signatures and frequencies, we are going to be fashioned as a people. Now, talking about this inheritance that we received by way of Imam Muhammad, by way of the conditions and circumstances that African Americans have had to face, from slavery on to Jim Crow and all of the conditioning, that was for a reason. It was for a reason to confine us enough to work on us so that the confinement would become a refinement. It's in the word fitna. Yeah, fitna means to give you a fit. But fitna is also a refinement that allows you to take coarse gold beneath the surface of a whole lot of dross matter, and put it in the fire until the fire burns off all of that dross matter, and the only thing you have left is pure gold. You see how that goes? So that's what the fitna is designed to do, right? So the point is that we have to look at our overall condition, our overall history, and we have to measure that history based on what we truly believe is our role in history, given to us by the source creator, and not lament over yesterday, not feel bad and become depressed over anything that has happened to us in history. Because what Allah is doing for us as a people right now, as we speak, is intended to refine us. And I'm speaking now again specifically to African American people. But and I don't mean just people who call themselves Muslim. I'm talking about the general population, because the general population were the ones going through this refinement. And now, believe it or not, we have such refined souls amongst the African American people, progressive minds. The children, many of them are coming here brighter. I know they're brighter than I was when I was age. All we have to do is take them by the hands and not allow these social conspirators to begin working their glamour scheme on them and their grammar schemes on them, through the music especially. We have to pay more attention to the development of our own culture, our own taste in music, our own taste in fashion. All of that needs to be preserved and advanced by us, because that is our inheritance. That's going to naturally inspire the rest of the world in the same way that the general culture of African American activities inspire the world. The reason why they are rapping in Japan and in China and in Russia is because they heard our African American young hip hop artists. Whatever we do, good or bad, the world is going to pick it up and run with it, believe it or not. And that's a good thing, and that's a not so good thing. So why don't we position ourselves to be in the forefront of the positive? Because the positive is going to outweigh the negative. That's what Imam Muhammad meant when he said goodness is on the rise. Evil is always trying to rise, but the time and place for evil at the level that we're talking about, that has shown itself in the past, that time, that clock has ticked, it's ticking itself out. Allah says he's coming with his clock, and Iblis's time is going to be done. And the only ones who will be saved will be al-mukhlisin, the ones we were discussing. So position yourself for that purity. Anyone else? Last call.
Assalamualaikum.
Alaikum salam. Alaikum salam.
I'd like to go back to a couple callers had me. The sister, when she was speaking about her doing the dua of oh Allah, protect me from my right, from my left, over here and below. But you could still do that as a personal dua, couldn't you? Because especially if you put at the end of it, because you are the all-encompassing.
You can say anything you want almost as a personal dua. You can ask for prayers for your mama. You know, she ain't in the Quran. You know, you can ask for prayers for Uncle Joe and, you know, cousin Pookie. You know, a dua doesn't have to be from the Quran. It's your personal plea or pleading to the ear of God, so to speak. So yes, all I'm saying is that we have to know where to draw the line between the worth of the words that Allah is using in the Quran and the mundane way in which we might present a dua, which is fine. We don't have to always make dua from the Quran. It can be from our own words. That's legitimate, but don't mix up the two. You know, Allah talks about those two rivers, sweet and salty, and there's a line between them that they don't overstep their bounds. So we have to be like that. But yeah, I hope that answered your question.
Yes. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam. And there was something I was going to say last. Oh, I'm going to say something very serious now before I get off the line. Listen with all intensity to what I'm about to say. And I've been saying this probably for I know at least 20 years, maybe closer to 30 years of my teaching. When I started out as an Imam, I began telling people, just because I was inspired to do so, that what the Islamic world is calling Islam is probably only maybe 15% related to the Quran and 85% other stuff. In 2021, I'm advancing that percentage to 95% of what we have been told is Islam as validated and instituted by Al-Quran. 95% of what they are showing us as Islam, I'm talking about the Muslim world of scholarship and the regulars, what's being taught in the average masjid, is probably 95% other than what you find in the Quran. And in many cases, I would say at least 50% against what is in the Quran. So if you want to know why I'm being so vehement against these other additions to Islamic knowledge, it's because they muddy the water of what the Quran is actually presenting as knowledge for your growth and development. You're going to be finding out in the very, very, very near future, and I've had this conversation with a few of you, you're going to be finding out some things that they have told you and taught you are Islam that actually are outright lies by people who are outright liars and by others who just don't know. They've been teaching the wrong thing and they're just ignorant of what the right thing is, and they themselves have to be awakened to what the truth of the matter is when it comes to Islam. And I could name some common things. As I've said in the past, how did you get your star and crescent as your national symbol? Did Muhammad present a star and crescent flag to you, or where did you get that? And when I look on the hats of wizards and warlocks, I see the star and crescent. So I have to ask the question, where did we get it? What does the symbol represent? I'm not going deep into it tonight, but the point is that where did we get that? Where did we get this designation Muslim to represent those who are Shahadatain takers? Where did we get Shahadatain? That's not in the Quran. We spoke about this last time. I know I'm stepping on some toes, but your toes, if you have them exposed to all of this freezing weather, then I need to step on them to remind you that you have some. You need to experience a little bit of pain in your religious toes so that you'll eventually give up religion and accept Deen as you're invited to do by the Quran. So these are not issues in the Deen that we are to take lightly. These are major, major, major things. So you're going to be hearing some things that's going to turn the tables even on what you believe to be the month of Ramadan, when the fast starts, when the fast stops. Do you know that according to the Quran, the fast is not supposed to stop until night itself, not Maghrib? Night. It says a layl. Layl doesn't mean Maghrib. You can find this in the Quran yourself. Oh, let me finish, please. All right. Just relax. You'll get in here. You're supposed to be fasting from the distinguishing between the white and black thread. The Quran tells you that. That's not just hadith. And you're supposed to fast all the way till layl, night fall. That would be around Aisha, right before Aisha. I know it's a longer day, and that's why some people will bucket, because you're judging it emotionally. And Allah says, He does not intend difficulty for you, but He intends to purify you. Now, the other part of that is that the way the Quran presents Ramadan, it does not present it as a mandatory behavior or activity. He presents it, and I can show you the exact wording. He presents it as being your choice, even in terms of the number of days that you are to fast. Do you know also that the Quran mentions fasting not as the fasting from food and drink, But the fasting from speaking, do you know that's also Siyam? Read the Surah 19 on Maryam, and it says that she took a fast, that she would not speak to anyone for a certain number of days. And then Allah says to her, so eat and drink. So he's trying to tell you fasting is not always, you know, abstaining from water and prunes and, you know, and that kind of thing. But fasting is also abstaining from stuff rumbling through your brain that you need to stop speaking on so much. You need to clear your head. Your brain needs to fast, in other words. Right? So a lot of things have been left out of the conversation of those who call ourselves Muslims because we have just accepted the line that had been fed us. And all of us, I guess, if not at least most of us, accept what's called the Sunni version of Islam. Was the Prophet a Sunni Muslim? And if not, where did that come from? Because I don't find that in the Quran. Was the Prophet a Shia Muslim? I don't find that in the Quran. So how did we come to accept all of these things that are not in the Quran? It's because of these crafty people in history that conditioned us to accept what they were teaching us because they wanted political and economic supremacy in the world. And they did not set forth to teach this Deen the way it was presented to them naturally and normally by Muhammad the Prophet. Almost immediately after he passed, they burnt up everything that did not reflect their personal views. They started appointing people who the majority, how did Muslims go into battle and kill each other just a few years after the passing of the Prophet? If these people were so tight, if they were so mukhlisin and united, you mean to tell me the wife of the Prophet, Aisha, went to war against Ali, one of the fourth right companions, and they were pulling swords. Ali got his head chopped off. I'm telling you the actual history. These people got murdered by each other. How did that happen if these were the purified ones that we rally behind as Muslims in 2021? You better check your history and you better qualify it by what's in the Quran, because none of these are safe simply because they say they walked beside the Prophet. There are people who walked beside Dr. Martin Luther King who were responsible for his murder, and that story still hasn't been told. Yeah, when he got shot. Signaling when he should get shot and being nowhere around the bullet. So it don't matter but that you were walking with the person, talking with the person, eating with the person in his hotel room, at the restaurant. And it's the same thing with the life of a prophet. It doesn't matter that you were there. Who's that one in the Bible with Jesus? Judas. Yeah, he's right there. He was like a Sahaba. He's right there. He kissing them on the thing. That's letting them know this is the one to kill.
That's right. That's right.
Not that they needed to know that. Jesus was known. They didn't have to kiss him on the cheek. It's all symbolism. And on the most part, what they've given us as Islamic history is also symbolism. Many of those things never even happened. There's symbolism. It's scholarly fist bumping with each other as scholars to say, look at what we introduced. Our ancestors introduced this 1,000 years ago, and they believe this actually happened. We know it's symbolic. And we operate, we benefit from the symbolism, but these people are so literal that we can almost tell them anything is Islam and they're going to accept it. And that's the sheepish mind that you have to learn to break out of. I'm talking to each and every one of us now. We have to break out of that tendency to just follow it because the Sunni said, or the Shia said, or the Hadith said, or the Sirah said. And anytime they get ready to introduce something to you that they know they can't back up with facts, they always introduce the angel. Well, the angel came and told him. Now, I'm not saying that I don't believe in angels. I do, but not as they're presented in that literature, because that's not how they're presented in the Quran. Read about the angels in the Quran, and then read about the angels they tell you came and did something weird. And the people, because they don't want to say they don't believe in angels, they won't say that they don't believe that happened, and they'll call you a kafir for saying that that didn't happen. So that's all I have to say on that. Be prepared for information in the future that's going to rock some worlds, but it's going to awaken so many more worlds. And you are going to be appreciative. You're going to be saying shukran that this information had been given to you. You're going to be so thankful to Allah that He chose you as a small minority of people right now to come into this understanding early. I don't care how old you are, you're coming into the information very early when most of the world is not aware of what I'm going to be speaking on in the next few months. And I just pray, and I pray that you pray along with me that Allah preserves the life of this language as I'm giving it to you and as you are giving it to other people, because you are the purveyors of the new growth, not the knee growth, but the new growth of Al-Islam in the world as a Deen. Anyone else? Anyone else quickly?
Allahu Akbar.
SubhanAllah, I can say something about that, brother instructor. When it comes down to cosmetology, we've been processed. So now we're the new group. We're the tight hair that's coming in, and we're coming in nice and strong without having all of those other things that have been destroying our hair, knocking us off piece.
Back to the fitra.
Alhamdulillah, that's
Yeah.
right.
We're taking on new growth, no more knee growth.
That's right.
All
That's right.
right, I gotta go. Yeah, thank you all for being with us and for being this patient. We say Alhamdulillah. We say Subhanallah. I try to stay away from saying Allahu Akbar. I told you why. Because that's not in the Quran. We say La ilaha illallah as a definitive statement. And we thank Allah for this understanding. And those of you who have family members listening, if they're still listening, thank you for being with us, for responding to your family members' invitation to be with us. I hope I didn't wear you out. I'm actually ending early, so be happy. we can go till 1 a.m, us, but we're not going to do that hopefully anymore. You won't need to. This webinar will be processed and available on YouTube. We're stepping it up a little bit during semester 15. So instead of receiving it through your email, you'll receive the YouTube link so that you can connect directly to it, and so that you can get your email list of people that you know and love and support and communicate with, and share that link with them. It's a much more professional introduction to what it is we're doing and saying.
Wonderful.
All right. Those of you who
Alhamdulillah.
yes, those of you, just as a reminder, housekeeping, those of you who have committed to the beginning of the month donation, if you haven't done so, some of you have. If you haven't done so, please follow through on your obligation and commitment. Everything that you do is appreciated and needed at this time. We're going through a lot of changes here at Nunetics Institute, and we have to keep things well oiled, if you know what I mean. We can't afford to slip up and move backwards at this juncture. And what's going to happen for us, I believe, in the next 6 months, a year, is going to be so wonderful that your soul is going to celebrate, because you're going to be in that picture. Some of you already have YouTube videos up. That's just the tip of the iceberg. As the world continues to flounder, they're going to be wanting to hold on to someone who's still situated foundationally on the land. And that land is right here. And you cannot hold on to a more trustworthy handhold than Allah's word. He tells you that in the Quran. Hold on to the rope or the cable of Allah.
That's right.
It's the most trustworthy handhold. He didn't say hold on to the hadiths.
That's right.
He said hold on to the rope of Allah. It is the most trustworthy handhold that you can hold out and grab and for support to keep you from sinking. Because the world is sinking around us. It's sinking fast. And the truth, as the world sinks, the truth is coming out more and more and more. And if you're not prepared for this age of Aquarius, where the water of information is beginning to flood the world, and people are beginning to look at what they've been told and realize that they have had the okie doke pulled over their eyes, and they're going to become very angry at some people, and they're going to be looking for people who are situated to give them the truth from God. And they realize that God is not white, that God is not Jesus, that Moses didn't part any physical waters called the Red Sea. See, when they start realizing that all of these things are fabrications and fallacies, they're going to be looking for el-haq, the truth. And if you don't have it because you're still swimming in fantasies and hadiths and make-believe stuff and make-believe history, you're going to be as bad, if not worse off than those people who have held on to those fallacies for hundreds and thousands of years. Because there'll be more truth in unraveling the symbolism that they've been operating under than there is in unraveling what you have that doesn't make any sense whether you try to interpret it or not. I hope that made sense.
Yeah.
The Arab is not God.
That's right.
See, we had to say that about the white man not that long ago.
That's right. That's right.
Now we need to say that about the Arab.
That's right.
With no bad feelings or hard feelings intended.
That's right.
We love humanity, but
That's
when you
right.
find people who have tried to superimpose their culture on the whole world through their religion, that's what it's
right.
about.
That's right. That's right.
Assalamu alaikum, brother instructor.
Alaikum assalam.
I have a question. This is Ahmed Hassan in DC. To me, this concept of Satan, Shaitan, the devil, Iblis, seems still seems vague. In other words, obviously we're not talking about a red man in the ground with a pitchfork. Obviously, we're not talking about some creature walking around, you know, to jump on you. So I guess when I say we, I'm talking about historical humans been referring to this idea of a Satan or devil or Iblis, whatever you call it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what are we really talking about? Are we talking about the lower inclinations in every human being? Is that what we're talking about?
Give it to you in a nutshell. You're right on track. You're talking about the lower energy centers within that system that I spoke of earlier under the name chakras, endocrine energies. We're talking about forces that operate within each and every one of us. They can be elevated or they can be decimated. That's your heaven and your hell for this life. You're not going to find it anywhere else outside of you. And as Imam Muhammad said, that devil is in you. And if he's not in you, he's going to be in another person like you.
Okay, then why don't we just say that instead of referring to when people talk, they'll say what the devil is or Satan or Iblis gonna do this or this. Why don't we just say humans are doing this?
Because it's not definitively human. It's not typically human. You are typically al-insan. You're not typically ash-shaytan. So I can't speak about you in a way that would encourage you to believe that this is your normal disposition.
Right. Wow.
It's like your mother when she tried to correct you at the dinner table around your other siblings. If you did something wrong and they were doing what they were supposed to do, you'd be sitting right there and she'll say, well, you wait until I talk to Johnny. Wait until and Johnny's right there. But she has to talk outside of Johnny to instill a greater measure of fear and trepidation in Johnny for when they do have that conversation. People who exhibit love will speak to you directly.
That's right.
And people who exhibit distaste for you will also confront you personally. But when you're speaking to people in the second person and they're there in the first person, it's because most of the time you're trying to correct their behavior so that they don't have to be punished. That's psychology. So Allah speaks in the second person in the Quran. And the wrongdoers are right there as the prophet is speaking. And Allah will say to them, they are in for a tremendous punishment. And he's talking to the people who are going to be punished. But because he's not speaking directly to them, it means the punishment is not as close as it's going to be if Allah has to say, didn't I tell you, as he says to Iblis?
Mhm.
Why didn't you bow down when I instructed you? See, when you start putting I in it, it's for either two reasons in the Quran. Either Allah loves you and he's using the first person to communicate with you, or you have done something tremendously distasteful and Allah is reprimanding you. Other than that, he says we, he's talking about himself and his powers and forces and angels. I say we have done so. We certainly created the human being in the most excellent mode. So you have to understand how to read the Quran. The Quran is coded. You have to pay more attention to those. So Satan is not us. Satan is not us. Satan is an anti-us. He works against human growth and development. So we don't want to go around calling people Satan, or we can't even go around calling people hypocrites.
Excuse me, instructor. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
This is our brother Amir Alameen, Southfield, Michigan.
Welcome.
And just on the point that the brother was speaking on, I remember Imam W.D. Muhammad saying that Satan was a bad mind, a bad idea, and a bad spirit. Is that applicable to what you're saying now?
That's absolutely correct. I was going to say that Shaitan, he manifests and he operates and he builds his influence on those levels, on the level of your mind that has gone astray, on the level of even your instincts that he can cause to go astray. When I say he can cause, I'm speaking outside of the person now, because those influences are fed from outside of you. You're not born with those evil inclinations. They are conditions that are introduced to you as you continue to grow in this human life. The baby itself is born with that kind of evil disposition. But yes, it's going to manifest in your spirit, it's going to manifest in your mind, and it's going to manifest in your behavior. And all of that, as I said, is working within the structure of your chakras. All of it. The lower chakras are controlling those lower appetites and urges, and they're supposed to be refined to the point where they begin to rise higher and higher to reach the more charity-oriented energies. See, when you get to the heart and above, you start to think more about other people than you do about yourself. When you're down here in the lower chakras, the lower three especially, they're ego-driven. You're thinking about your own personal survival, your own personal sex life, and who you're going to get with, and who you're going to get something from, and how you're going to be sustained. It's all about survival. But when you rise above the heart, you begin to think about others. When you rise above that heart, you begin to think about doing for people whose names you don't even know across the waters. You're giving charity, you're doing charity work. You're, Doctors Without Borders and the barefooted doctor. You don't know those people over there in India and Africa, but he's coming out of his higher chakras to do that.
At Quran, Baniana.
Yes, that excellence is what we're talking about. That generosity. Yes, all of the children of Adam. But if you're not a child of Adam because you're not acting in that disposition that Adam was granted, then that's when you're operating out of some other motivation. And you shouldn't get what Adam got. Adam got he came into a situation where the angels made sajda to him. Now, if you're not operating as a child of Adam, that's why it's not working for you. You should be able to make a request and have them almost fall in your lap as soon as you close your mouth. It happens for me. I don't know what's going on with the rest of you. But I'm telling you, you should be able to make requests. Allah says that you should call him. He responds to the call of everyone who calls him. Every day he gets a response. But he just wants to know, will you respond to his call? How many of us will respond to his call? He has a call also. And all you have to do is acknowledge that he's calling you. You don't even have to answer the phone. Just say, when you hear it ring, I know that's from Allah. You don't have to answer it. Allah says he will still come to your aid. When he calls you, he picks up right away. Pardon me, when you call him, he picks up right away. When we call Allah, we can even just think about calling him and he'll still answer us. Yeah, I'm too dirty today to talk to Allah. I can't even make dua. Not today. Let me do some voodoo or something, and maybe I'll be in check. Yeah, just that warning. And you left doing the wrong thing that you were doing, Allah will still come to your aid. Allah is not us. He's not human. He doesn't act like we act. We think about what we would do. You got to think how Allah presents himself in terms of the things that he does. So with that said, it's very by time for all of you and for me. So I thank you for being with us in these numbers for this amount of time. And I pray that all of you will continue to become learners in the university online learning course. If you're not technically with the class, you can do so by emailing me at cosmicquran1@gmail.com. I should have Habiba or someone always put that in the chat, so we'll have it ready. But Cosmic Quran1. Amir, you put it in there? No. Okay, hold on. I'm doing it at email.com. Okay. So that's my email address there in the chat. I send it? No, I didn't. So what good is it if I don't send it? Let's see. I'm still getting used to okay. Let's see if I'm doing this right. Can you guys see that? Hold on. Everyone, hold on. Yeah, I think I just sent it. I'm not sure. But in any case, yeah, thank you, Habiba. Cosmic Quran1, the number 1 at gmail.com. And I'll send you information on how you can join the class. Tuition is not that much. It's to be paid every 3 months, which is a semester. We're in semester 15. And most of the people you're looking at have been with me that long. We thank Allah for you, for all of what you've done to keep this ball rolling. All right. And we'll give concluding remarks on Bilal and all of the meanings of the 4, including the 4 birds of Ibrahim. We'll do that on the very next session, inshallah. Thank you. And we greet you all with the greetings of peace that obligates each and every one of us to keep the peace. Salamun alaikum. Let me hear back from you.
Wa alaikum assalam.
Wa alaikum
assalam.
All right.
Brother Instructor, there's a question. There wasn't a question. I made a statement over in the Western call. So before you click off, if you can check it out, it's just something real quick. And good night.
Okay.
Right. Thank you. I read it. It's beautiful.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah, okay. With Allah speaking indirectly, that says that seems, is that seems?
Yeah, it seems,
Yeah,
yes.
that seems to be giving us the chance to reflect and think within ourselves. That's right. Yeah, you don't want to have to be right there up in his presence.
That's
before
right.
you, as James Brown would say, get on the good foot.
Okay.
All right.
Everybody have a nice night's rest. Alhamdulillah.
Indeed. All right.